In a small, forgotten town nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, there stood a house that the locals whispered about but seldom approached. The Whitmore house had been abandoned for decades, its once vibrant paint now peeling away like the memories of those who had once called it home. Rumors circulated about its last occupants, an eccentric family known for their peculiarities and an unsettling connection to the town's history. Despite the eerie atmosphere, curiosity always pulled at those who dared to pass by, as if the walls themselves beckoned them to listen closely to the stories they held. The arrival of a young couple, Ethan and Clara, marked the beginning of a new chapter in the house's long history. Drawn to the allure of the supernatural and the stories that hung in the air like a fine mist, they decided to purchase the Whitmore house at a remarkably low price. To them, it was an adventure, a chance to restore a piece of history and perhaps unearth the truth behind the ghostly tales that swirled around it. As they stepped inside, they were greeted by an oppressive silence that seemed to engulf them, the air thick with dust and the scent of decay. The shadows danced on the walls as the sun's rays filtered through the broken windows, creating an unsettling but beautiful spectacle. While unpacking their belongings, Clara stumbled upon a peculiar portrait hidden behind a stack of old newspapers. The painting depicted a woman with striking features, her eyes seemingly following Clara wherever she moved. There was a melancholy in the woman's expression, a sadness that tugged at Clara's heart. She could feel an inexplicable connection to the painting, as if it held a piece of her own soul. Ignoring Ethan's dismissive comments about it being just a dusty old painting, Clara decided to hang it in their living room, believing it could add character to their new home. That night, as they settled in, they were awakened by faint whispers echoing through the halls. At first, they dismissed it as the wind or perhaps the house settling, but the murmurs persisted, growing louder as the darkness deepened. Ethan, attempting to reassure Clara, suggested they were simply letting their imaginations run wild. However, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the whispers were somehow intertwined with the portrait she had hung earlier that day. Was it merely her imagination, or did the painting pulse with a life of its own? Determined to uncover the truth, Clara began researching the Whitmore family. She delved into old town records and newspaper articles, unearthing tales of tragedy and loss. The woman in the portrait was none other than Lillian Whitmore, the family matriarch, who was said to have vanished under mysterious circumstances. The more Clara learned about Lillian's life, the more she felt a kinship with her, as if the threads of their fates were inexplicably woven together. Clara began to feel that the house was not merely haunted by its past, but was alive with the stories of those who had lived there. As days turned into weeks, the whispers grew more insistent, beckoning Clara to explore the hidden corners of the house. She discovered a hidden compartment in the attic, revealing a trove of letters and diaries belonging to Lillian. These writings spoke of heartache, betrayal, and an unquenchable thirst for freedom. It was in one of the entries that Clara found a chilling passage. "The walls hold my secrets, and if you listen closely, they will reveal themselves." Each revelation sent shivers down her spine, blurring the line between the living and the dead. Ethan, however, began to grow increasingly uneasy. He urged Clara to stop her obsessive exploration, convinced that the house was nothing more than an old structure filled with remnants of the past. He insisted that they focus on renovations and moving forward, but Clara felt drawn deeper into the mystery, unable to resist the pull of Lillian's story. The more she learned, the more determined she became to uncover the truth. One stormy night, the whispers turned into desperate pleas. Clara felt compelled to follow the sounds, leading her to the cellar, a place they had both avoided due to its oppressive darkness. Armed with a flashlight, she descended the creaking stairs, the air thick with dampness and a sense of foreboding. As she reached the bottom, the whispers stopped abruptly, leaving her in an eerie silence that felt almost tangible. It was then that she noticed an outline of a door, partially hidden behind cobwebs and debris. With trembling hands, Clara opened the door, revealing a small, musty room filled with old furniture and forgotten relics. In the center stood an ornate mirror, covered in dust. As Clara approached, she noticed the reflection of the portrait behind her, but the woman in the painting looked different, her expression now one of rage and despair. Clara stepped back, horrified. The room seemed to pulse with energy, as if it were alive, feeding off her fear and curiosity. Suddenly, a realization washed over her. The whispers, the portrait, the strange connection, everything was a warning. Clara stumbled back, colliding with the wall as she struggled to comprehend the dark legacy of the Whitmore house. As she fled from the cellar, she heard a soft, sorrowful cry echoing behind her. The house was not simply haunted. It was a prison for the spirits of the past, and now it had set its sights on her. The whispers had become a siren's song, and Clara was its next victim, trapped between the echoes of history and the haunting shadows of her own choices. The morning after Clara's harrowing experience in the cellar, the atmosphere in the Whitmore house was thick with tension. Ethan sensed something was amiss, but Clara struggled to articulate the weight of her revelation. The portrait of Lillian loomed over their lives, a silent guardian of the secrets that twisted within the walls. The house, once seen as a quaint project, now felt like a looming specter, haunting their every moment. Clara tried to shake off the unease, but the sense of foreboding clung to her like a shadow, refusing to be ignored. Determined to regain some semblance of normalcy, Clara suggested they tackle the renovations together. Ethan welcomed the idea, hoping it would help to ease Clara's mind and provide a distraction from the whispers that had invaded their lives. They decided to start in the living room, peeling away layers of wallpaper that had long since faded. As they worked, Clara's thoughts drifted to the diary entries she had uncovered. Each word seemed to resonate, forming a haunting chorus in her mind, urging her to pay attention to the hidden truths lurking beneath the surface. With every strip of wallpaper they removed, Clara felt as if they were uncovering more than just the physical decay of the house. The walls bore witness to the passage of time, and she imagined the laughter and tears that had once filled the space. Yet, beneath this nostalgic veneer lay a palpable tension, a sense that the house was guarding something far more sinister. It was as if they were unearthing the very essence of the Whitmore family, layer by layer, revealing not only the beauty but also the ugliness of their past. During one particularly intense afternoon, Clara discovered a hidden panel in the wall. With a swift motion, she pried it open, revealing a small compartment filled with dust-covered photographs. Each image depicted the Whitmore family at various stages of their lives, the joy and sorrow etched into their faces. Yet, as Clara sifted through the collection, she noticed an unsettling pattern. In each photograph, Lillian's eyes appeared hollow, devoid of the warmth one would expect from a mother and wife. It struck Clara like a cold wave. There was something deeply unsettling about the way Lillian's spirit seemed to dim with each passing year. Ethan, noticing Clara's growing obsession with the photographs, urged her to take a break. "You're becoming consumed by this," he cautioned, worry lacing his voice. "This house is old and worn. It's just a building, not a vessel for spirits." His words, intended to comfort, only deepened Clara's conviction. She felt a pull toward Lillian, an urgency to uncover the truth behind the fading memories and the woman's lost vitality. Despite Ethan's protests, Clara resolved to delve deeper, convinced that understanding Lillian's life could shed light on the darkness enveloping them. That night, as they prepared for bed, Clara was once again drawn to the portrait in the living room. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows that danced across the wall, momentarily bringing the painting to life. Clara stood transfixed, feeling the weight of Lillian's gaze, as if the woman were pleading for her to listen. The air grew heavy with emotion, and Clara felt a rush of empathy and sorrow. It was not just a portrait. It was a gateway to a tragic story waiting to be told. In the quiet moments that followed, Clara made a decision. She would hold a seance. She hoped to connect with Lillian's spirit, believing it could offer her insight into the woman's life and the fate that befell her. As she shared her idea with Ethan, he furrowed his brow in disbelief. "Clara, you can't be serious. You don't know what you're inviting into our home." But Clara's resolve was unyielding. The house was a character in itself, and she felt an unbreakable bond forming. Ignoring Ethan's concerns, she began to prepare for the event, gathering candles, a Ouija board, and a few close friends who shared her fascination with the supernatural. On the night of the seance, a storm brewed outside, lightning illuminating the darkened sky and casting flickering shadows through the windows. Clara's friends arrived, a mix of excitement and skepticism filling the air. They formed a circle in the living room, candles flickering ominously as Clara placed the Ouija board at the center. She felt a rush of anticipation, as if the very walls of the house were vibrating with energy. Clara's heart raced. Tonight, she would unravel the mystery of Lillian Whitmore. As they initiated the seance, Clara called out to Lillian, inviting her spirit to join them. The candle flames flickered wildly as the group placed their fingers on the planchette, a shared sense of anticipation washing over them. For a moment, nothing happened. Clara's heart sank, and she feared she had misjudged the connection. But then, the planchette began to move, gliding across the board with an eerie ease. A collective gasp filled the room as it spelled out a chilling message: "Save me." The temperature in the room plummeted, and an inexplicable heaviness descended upon them. Clara's friends exchanged nervous glances, their skepticism quickly fading as a low, mournful wail echoed from the walls. The whispers that had haunted Clara transformed into a cacophony of desperate voices, each one pleading for acknowledgement. Clara, feeling the weight of Lillian's anguish, pressed on, urging the spirit to reveal the truth behind her suffering. As the candles flickered violently, the air thick with dread, Clara felt an overwhelming presence surge through the room, as if Lillian's spirit was fighting to break free. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything fell silent. The candles extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. Clara's heart raced as she felt a cold breeze wrap around her, the whispers fading into a chilling quiet. In that darkness, she sensed a shift, an awareness that they had opened a door that could never be closed. The house, which had once felt like a forgotten relic, now pulsed with a life of its own, and Clara realized the truth. They had unearthed not just the past, but something far more sinister, and the true horror of the Whitmore house was only just beginning to reveal itself. The aftermath of the seance left Clara in a daze, her mind racing with a whirlwind of emotions. The once comforting walls of the Whitmore house now felt oppressive, almost claustrophobic. The energy in the air was charged, thick with the weight of Lillian's unfulfilled desires and the dark secrets that had lain dormant for so long. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they had not only invited Lillian's spirit into their lives, but had also awakened something else, something darker that lay beneath the surface of the house. In the days that followed, Ethan noticed a change in Clara. The fervor with which she had approached the renovations had transformed into an obsessive need to uncover more about the Whitmore family. She scoured old records, poring over town archives and local libraries, desperate to piece together Lillian's story. Meanwhile, the whispers grew more pronounced, echoing through the halls, carrying with them the unmistakable sound of laughter. It was a haunting melody, a reminder of happier times that contrasted sharply with the darkness that had crept into their lives. Despite Ethan's concerns, Clara felt a strong pull toward the house and its history. She had uncovered snippets of Lillian's life, a series of letters detailing her aspirations as an artist, dreams of a brighter future, and the devastating toll that grief had taken on her. Clara found herself identifying with Lillian, feeling a profound connection to the woman who had been trapped in this decaying shell. She began to fantasize about her own potential future, imagining that by understanding Lillian's past, she could somehow help the spirit find peace. One evening, as Clara sat in the living room, surrounded by her findings, she felt the air shift around her. The atmosphere grew electric, and she heard the laughter again, clearer this time, echoing off the walls. Clara paused, her heart racing. The sound was childlike, innocent, yet imbued with an unsettling quality that sent shivers down her spine. "Ethan," she called out, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. But when he entered the room, the laughter abruptly stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence that felt almost mocking. "What is it?" Ethan asked, concern etched on his face. Clara explained the laughter, her voice quaking with intensity. "It's as if the house is alive. I think it's trying to communicate." Ethan's brow furrowed in disbelief. "Clara, it's just your imagination. We need to focus on getting this place fixed up. You can't let this consume you." Clara's heart sank at his dismissal, but she refused to let go of her conviction. Lillian was reaching out, and she felt an overwhelming duty to respond. That night, Clara decided to investigate further. Armed with a flashlight and her notebook, she ventured through the dimly lit corridors of the house. As she walked, the laughter echoed again, leading her toward the staircase that spiraled down to the cellar. Despite Ethan's warnings, Clara felt drawn to the very place she had fled just days before. It was as if the house were beckoning her, urging her to uncover its hidden depths. In the cellar, Clara's heart raced as she recalled the earlier seance and the chilling message they had received. With the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, she scanned the walls for any clues or symbols. The laughter intensified, bouncing off the cold stone, growing louder and more manic. Clara felt a thrill run through her. Was it fear or exhilaration? She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to listen, to feel the laughter pulse through her. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and spotted something glinting near the far wall. As she approached, she discovered a dusty, ornate box partially hidden beneath a pile of old crates. The moment she touched the box, the laughter stopped, leaving behind a heavy silence that filled her with foreboding. Clara hesitated but then slowly lifted the lid, revealing an assortment of children's toys, broken trinkets, and yellowed photographs that depicted children playing in the yard of the Whitmore house. Among the photographs was a single, beautifully drawn sketch of a girl, her face strikingly similar to Lillian's. Clara felt a chill creep down her spine as she realized that this was Lillian as a child. The laughter had not just been a distant echo. It belonged to the children who had once filled the house with joy. Clara's heart sank as she grasped the significance of this discovery. The spirit she had been seeking was not merely Lillian. It was a tapestry of lives lost, memories fading into the walls of the house. As Clara examined the box's contents, she stumbled upon a small diary, its pages fragile and worn. Carefully, she opened it, revealing entries from a child named Alice, Lillian's younger sister. The entries were filled with innocent musings about the world, recounting laughter-filled days spent playing in the garden and adventures with friends. Yet, as the pages progressed, the tone shifted dramatically. Alice spoke of shadows creeping closer, of feeling watched by unseen eyes, and of a growing dread that plagued her small heart. Clara's breath hitched as she read the final entries, penned in frantic handwriting. "The house is alive," one entry declared. "It wants something from us. It won't let us go." The weight of those words settled heavily in Clara's stomach. The laughter that had once filled the air was now a memory tinged with sorrow, and the playful spirits of children had been trapped within these walls, bound to a past that no one could escape. Clara emerged from the cellar, her mind racing with questions. The laughter she had heard was not simply a remnant of joy. It was a cry for help from the spirits of the Whitmore family. With each revelation, the sense of connection deepened, but so did the urgency to act. Lillian's plight, Alice's fears, and the echoes of laughter, they were all threads in a dark tapestry woven by the house itself. Determined to free the spirits trapped within the Whitmore house, Clara realized she needed to delve deeper into Lillian's life and the circumstances that led to their torment. It was time to confront the shadows that lingered in the corners of the house, to seek the truth that had long been buried. The house was alive with the echoes of laughter, yes, but it also held secrets that could not remain hidden any longer. Clara was ready to confront the darkness and find a way to set the lost souls free, even if it meant venturing into the depths of the past. As Clara processed the profound implications of Alice's diary, she found herself drawn back to the haunting portrait of Lillian that hung in their living room. It had once seemed like an ordinary piece of art, but now it represented so much more. A bridge to the past, a reflection of the lives trapped within the walls of the Whitmore house. Clara felt an urgent need to understand how this painting had played a role in the family's history and how it tied into the stories of Lillian and Alice. The morning after her discovery in the cellar, Clara approached the portrait with a mix of reverence and trepidation. The light streaming through the window cast a warm glow over Lillian's painted face. Yet Clara felt an unsettling chill in the air, as if the warmth could not penetrate the layers of sorrow embedded in the canvas. She reached out to touch the frame, half expecting it to feel cold and alive beneath her fingers. As she did, an inexplicable surge of energy coursed through her, as though Lillian herself was trying to communicate. Determined to uncover the secrets of the portrait, Clara decided to contact a local historian who specialized in the town's enigmatic past. She hoped that by learning more about Lillian's life and the circumstances surrounding the portrait, she might find a clue to break the curse that seemed to haunt the house. After a few phone calls, Clara scheduled a meeting with Mr. Thompson, a knowledgeable elder who had lived in the town his entire life. His passion for history and uncanny ability to recall even the most obscure details made him a valuable resource. When Clara met Mr. Thompson in his dusty little office filled with books and old photographs, she felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The room was lit by warm light filtering through a window, but the shadows danced ominously in the corners, reflecting her inner turmoil. "The Whitmore house," he began, leaning back in his creaky chair, "is a well of stories, some happy, many tragic." Clara's heart raced as she shared her discoveries about Lillian and Alice, recounting the laughter and the darkness that had haunted her since moving in. Mr. Thompson listened intently, his eyes narrowing as she mentioned the portrait. "Ah, Lillian Whitmore," he said, his voice low. "That painting has been a source of intrigue for many years." Lillian was known for her beauty and her artistry, but also for the despair that enveloped her later in life. He began to describe how Lillian had once been a promising painter, capturing the essence of the world around her with vibrant colors and swirling brushstrokes. But as her family faced mounting tragedies, deaths, betrayals, and financial ruin, Lillian's art transformed into something darker, reflecting the turmoil within her soul. As he spoke, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that Lillian's spirit still lingered within the portrait, bound to the emotions she had poured into her work. "There are whispers," Mr. Thompson continued, "that the portrait holds Lillian's essence, her spirit trapped in the strokes of paint. Some believe that if you look closely enough, you can see the layers of her despair layered beneath the surface, just waiting to be unearthed." This revelation sent a shiver down Clara's spine. If Lillian's spirit was indeed linked to the painting, then perhaps the laughter she had heard was a plea for release, an echo of a life once filled with joy. With this new perspective, Clara returned home, determined to confront the portrait once more. She positioned herself in front of it, heart pounding in her chest. "Lillian," she whispered, "I want to help you. I want to understand." As she gazed into the painting, something shifted within her. The colors seemed to pulse, and for a brief moment, she felt as though she were being drawn into the canvas itself, a wave of emotions flooding over her. Happiness, despair, longing. It was as if Lillian were reaching out from the depths of her creation, desperate to share her story. Suddenly, Clara's mind filled with visions. Images of Lillian painting in the garden, surrounded by laughter and warmth, her sister Alice playing nearby. But these memories quickly darkened, replaced by scenes of sorrow. Lillian standing over a casket, tears streaming down her face. Alice, pale and frail, whispering secrets into the night. Clara felt a crushing weight on her chest as she experienced Lillian's pain, an intimate glimpse into a soul haunted by the loss of her loved ones. With each revelation, Clara realized that the portrait was not just a reflection of Lillian, but a living testament to her struggles and fears. The laughter she had heard echoed through the house was perhaps a remnant of the joy that had once filled their lives, now twisted into a haunting reminder of what had been lost. Clara's resolve deepened. She would find a way to release Lillian and Alice from the shackles of their past, to honor their memories and set their spirits free. As Clara continued to study the portrait, she made a startling discovery. In the lower corner, barely visible under the frame, was an inscription that read, "To be seen, one must be heard." The words resonated within her, a call to action. Clara understood now that she needed to listen, not just to the whispers of the house, but to the stories of those who had lived and suffered within its walls. The portrait was not merely an artwork. It was a voice begging to be acknowledged, a spirit yearning for recognition. Clara gathered her notes and the artifacts she had uncovered, preparing to hold another seance, this time focused on Lillian's spirit. She needed to create a space where Lillian could share her story, where the laughter could be reclaimed from the shadows and transformed into something beautiful. That evening, as she set up the candles and laid out the Ouija board, she felt a strange sense of purpose envelop her, a certainty that she was on the brink of something monumental. In the dim light of the living room, Clara's heart raced as she recalled the inscription on the portrait. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. "Lillian," she called softly, "I'm here to listen. Please share your story." The air grew thick with anticipation, and the walls seemed to hold their breath. Clara opened her eyes, determined to not only uncover the truth, but to finally break the cycle of sorrow that had bound Lillian and Alice to the house for so long. This time, Clara was ready to face whatever came next, ready to embrace the haunting portrait and the legacy it held. The evening of the séance was saturated with a sense of urgency as Clara prepared herself for what lay ahead. The flickering candles cast dancing shadows against the walls, illuminating the room with a soft, ethereal glow. Clara arranged the photographs of Lillian and Alice on the table, alongside the artifacts from the cellar. She felt a deep connection to them, as though their spirits lingered nearby, guiding her through this process. The air was thick with anticipation and the weight of unspoken truths, and Clara understood that she was not just a bystander in this unfolding drama. She was an integral part of it. As her friends arrived, each carrying a mixture of excitement and trepidation, Clara sensed the collective energy in the room shift. They formed a circle, their hands resting gently on the Ouija board, ready to invoke the spirits that lingered within the walls of the Whitmore house. Clara took a moment to collect her thoughts, focusing on Lillian and Alice, hoping to bridge the gap between their worlds. She could feel the gravity of the moment settle around them like a heavy blanket, but she was resolute in her belief that this was a necessary step toward liberation. "Lillian, Alice, we are here to listen to you," Clara spoke, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. The room fell silent, and the tension felt almost palpable as they awaited a response. The planchette lay still for what felt like an eternity before it began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing urgency. Clara's heart raced as the device spelled out the letters, STOP. Confusion swept through the group, and Clara frowned, pressing for clarity. "Stop what? Please help us understand." As if in response, the planchette shifted again, spelling out, FRGT. The air around them grew cold, and a sense of dread washed over Clara. It was clear that the spirits were trying to convey something important, something they felt was vital for Clara and her friends to know. Clara's determination only intensified. She could not abandon Lillian and Alice to a silence that had persisted for too long. The atmosphere thickened as Clara pressed on, feeling an electric charge fill the room. "We won't forget you. We want to help. Please, tell us your story." This time, the planchette glided across the board, spelling out LIFE. The word hung in the air like a haunting echo. Clara felt a pang of sorrow, realizing that Lillian and Alice had lived in a world where their joys had been overshadowed by tragedy. She needed to hear the whole story, the love, the loss, the struggles that had shaped their existence within the walls of the Whitmore house. As the night unfolded, the candles flickered violently, casting eerie shadows that danced across the room. Clara felt the presence of Lillian more strongly now, as if the spirit was drawing upon her memories to share the tapestry of her life. With each letter spelled out, the group pieced together fragments of a haunting narrative. Lillian's early years as a vibrant artist, her love for her sister Alice, and the joys they shared in their childhood. The laughter that had once filled the house was palpable, a fleeting glimpse of innocence now tarnished by the passage of time. But as the story unfolded, the tone shifted. Clara felt the room grow heavier as Lillian recounted her marriage to Thomas Whitmore, a man whose charm had quickly turned to darkness. The planchette moved with a frantic energy as the letters spelled out BTRYL, and Clara's heart sank. She sensed that Lillian's life had been riddled with disappointments, that the once vibrant artist had been trapped in a loveless marriage, her spirit dimming with each passing year. The laughter of her childhood seemed a distant memory, overshadowed by a reality filled with anguish and despair. "Tell us what happened, Lillian," Clara urged, her voice almost a whisper. The planchette responded, spelling out SECRET, and Clara's breath hitched. The word held a gravity that suggested not only the burdens Lillian had carried, but also the dangers that lurked within the house itself. As Clara continued to probe, the spirit's presence intensified, the room crackling with energy as if the very walls were eager to release the truths they held. Suddenly, the candles flickered wildly, and a gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the flames and plunging them into darkness. Clara's heart raced as she fumbled for her flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows. She could hear her friends murmuring nervously, but she felt an undeniable pull to push through the fear. This was a pivotal moment. The darkness was merely a veil that could not hide the truth. In the eerie silence, Clara felt an overwhelming need to continue. "Lillian, we are here for you," she said, her voice echoing in the stillness. Slowly, the planchette began to move again, spelling out DONT. Clara's stomach dropped as she realized the spirit was warning her. The tension in the room escalated as the energy shifted again, becoming more chaotic, a whirlwind of emotions that threatened to spiral out of control. "Lillian, we want to help you. We want to set you free," Clara implored, determination radiating from her. "Please, tell us what we need to do." The planchette hesitated before moving once more, and Clara held her breath as it spelled out EXBOSE. The word sent a shiver down her spine, but she understood what it meant. The secrets that had been buried, the truth that had been hidden, must come to light for Lillian to find peace. The seance reached a fever pitch, the energy pulsing in waves as Clara felt the weight of generations pressing down upon her. She realized that the portrait of Lillian was not merely an image. It was a record of the pain, the joy, and the secrets that had shaped her life. The laughter she had heard was a memory yearning to be reclaimed, a reminder of the vibrant spirit that still lingered, desperate for release. As the session drew to a close, the candles flickered back to life, illuminating the faces of Clara and her friends, reflecting a mixture of fear and awe. They had opened a door that could not be closed, a Pandora's box filled with the haunting echoes of the past. Clara felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but she was determined to uncover the truth and set the spirits free. With the weight of the evening pressing heavily on her shoulders, Clara realized that the journey had only just begun. Lillian's story was intertwined with the very fabric of the house, and to expose the truth, they would need to confront the shadows that lurked in the corners of their lives. Clara felt the laughter of the past calling to her, urging her to remember the joy that had once filled the Whitmore house. It was time to reclaim that laughter, to weave the tapestry of Lillian and Alice's lives into something beautiful once more, and to finally break the cycle of sorrow that had haunted them for far too long. With the revelations from the seance still fresh in her mind, Clara felt a sense of urgency enveloping her like a storm cloud. The past had reared its head, revealing a tapestry of joy interwoven with sorrow and secrets. Lillian's plea to expose the truth resonated deep within Clara, igniting a fire of determination. She understood that to free Lillian and Alice, she would need to unearth the hidden history of the Whitmore house and confront the darkness that had long overshadowed their lives. In the days following the seance, Clara devoted herself to research, sifting through archives and scouring the town's historical records. She immersed herself in the lives of the Whitmore family, searching for connections that could unravel the mystery of Lillian's torment. Each piece of information added a new layer to the story. Thomas Whitmore's troubling past, the scandalous rumors that had surrounded him, and the tragedies that had struck the family like a relentless wave. As she gathered the pieces, Clara felt a growing sense of dread, as if each revelation was drawing her closer to a dark truth that had been buried for too long. Meanwhile, Ethan grew increasingly concerned about Clara's fixation on the house and its history. He tried to urge her to take a break, to step back from the obsession that seemed to consume her. "You need to be careful," he warned one evening as they sat in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of Clara's research. "This isn't just a story. You're dealing with real lives, real pain. What if you uncover something that's better left hidden?" Clara understood his worries, but her resolve was unwavering. She had made a promise to Lillian and Alice, and she couldn't back down now. As Clara delved deeper into her research, she uncovered a series of letters exchanged between Lillian and her closest friend, Margaret. The correspondence painted a vivid picture of Lillian's life, a life marked by artistic aspirations that clashed with the oppressive expectations of her husband. The letters revealed the toll that Thomas's jealousy had taken on Lillian's spirit, stifling her creativity and forcing her into a role that felt foreign and suffocating. Clara felt a kinship with Lillian, a recognition of the struggles of a woman who had once been vibrant but had become a ghost of her former self. In one particularly poignant letter, Lillian confided in Margaret about a mysterious incident that had left her feeling trapped in her own home. "The shadows whisper to me at night," Lillian wrote. "Sometimes I think I can hear the laughter of children, but it fades too quickly, swallowed by the silence of despair. I fear I'm losing my mind." Clara's heart ached at these words, realizing that Lillian had been battling her demons long before her death. The laughter that Clara had heard during the seance was a flicker of hope, a reminder of the joy that had once filled the Whitmore house. The following day, Clara decided to confront the portrait again, hoping it would yield more secrets. She stood before it, the glow of the morning light illuminating Lillian's painted face. "What do you want me to know?" Clara whispered, her breath trembling with the weight of the moment. Suddenly, she felt a rush of energy. The air around her crackled with intensity. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to sink into the energy of the moment. In her mind's eye, she could see flashes of Lillian's life, a whirlwind of colors and emotions that painted a vivid picture of both beauty and anguish. As the visions washed over her, Clara found herself standing in a sunlit garden, surrounded by blooming flowers and laughter. Children played nearby, their joyous cries echoing in the air. But as she turned her gaze, the scene shifted, darkening into a dismal reflection of despair. Clara saw Lillian standing alone, her face streaked with tears, while Thomas's shadow loomed in the background, menacing and unyielding. The duality of these images pierced Clara's heart. She understood that Lillian had been trapped between love and sorrow, creativity and oppression. Determined to uncover the truth behind Thomas's dark influence, Clara delved into town records to learn more about his life. As she pieced together the timeline, she discovered that Thomas had a history of erratic behavior, including bouts of jealousy and paranoia that had escalated throughout their marriage. The community had whispered about Thomas's temper, and Clara began to see a pattern, one that mirrored Lillian's struggle to break free from the chains that bound her. The laughter that had once filled the house had been silenced by fear, a tragedy masked by the facade of a perfect family. One afternoon, while sorting through an old box of documents, Clara stumbled upon a newspaper article that caught her eye. The headline read, "Local artist found dead in tragic circumstances," and as she read, the details sent chills down her spine. The article described Lillian's untimely death, hinting at foul play but offering no conclusive evidence. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she realized that the town had buried the truth, choosing to preserve the Whitmore family's reputation over justice for Lillian. Armed with this knowledge, Clara returned home, her heart racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that Thomas had played a role in Lillian's demise. And if that were true, The danger was not just a thing of the past. It was still lurking in the shadows, threatening to silence her once again. The whispers of the house grew louder. The laughter she had once found comforting now twisted into something sinister. Clara understood that to expose the truth, she would need to confront Thomas's legacy head-on. That evening, Clara called her friends together once more, determined to share her findings. As they gathered in the dimly lit living room, Clara laid out the pieces of the puzzle she had uncovered. Lillian's life was filled with pain, but it's also a story of resilience. She began, her voice steady despite the turmoil swirling within her. We have to confront what happened here, not just for her sake, but for the spirits trapped within these walls. Her friends listened intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear and determination. Clara felt the weight of their collective resolve. They were ready to uncover the truth together. They discussed plans to visit the local historical society, to dig deeper into Thomas's past, and to seek any remaining evidence that could shed light on Lillian's tragic fate. The storm outside raged on, but within the walls of the Whitmore house, a sense of purpose began to emerge. With each passing moment, Clara felt the shadows of the past drawing closer, the storm gathering intensity. The laughter that had once echoed through the halls of the Whitmore house was becoming a cacophony of cries for justice, urging her forward. She was determined to unearth the secrets buried deep within the tapestry of Lillian's life, to confront the darkness that had stolen so much from the Whitmore family. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Clara was ready to face whatever awaited her, knowing that the truth had the power to heal the wounds that had festered for far too long. The morning after their meeting, Clara and her friends gathered their research materials and headed to the local historical society, eager to uncover more about Thomas Whitmore and the family's shadowy past. Clara felt a blend of anticipation and anxiety. The storm that had been brewing in her mind now reflected the weather outside. Dark clouds gathered ominously, promising rain. The air was thick with tension, as if the universe was aware of the secrets they were about to unearth. As they arrived at the historical society, Clara was struck by the building's austere facade, a reminder of the town's long history. Inside, the dimly lit rooms were filled with dusty artifacts and faded photographs, remnants of lives that had shaped the community. Clara felt a sense of reverence as she stepped into the archive room, where rows of shelves held boxes filled with records. It was here that they hoped to find the missing pieces of Lillian and Thomas's story. Clara led her friends to a table where they could spread out their notes and begin their search. As they sifted through old newspapers and town records, Clara felt a growing urgency. Each page they turned brought them closer to the truth, yet it also heightened the fear that had been gnawing at her since they had begun this journey. They found articles detailing Thomas's political ambitions and the facade he maintained in the community. His public persona was that of a charming and charismatic man, but whispers of his violent outbursts began to seep through the pages. As Clara read aloud, her voice tinged with disbelief, her friends exchanged worried glances. He was revered in this town, Ethan said, shaking his head in disbelief. It's hard to imagine him as anything but a respected figure. Clara felt a swell of anger rising within her. The dichotomy between Thomas's public life and the reality of his actions was a bitter pill to swallow. How many people had turned a blind eye to Lillian's suffering? How many lives had been impacted by this man's cruelty? They spent hours combing through records, and Clara began to notice patterns that connected Thomas's actions to a series of strange occurrences in town. Reports of unexplained accidents, mysterious illnesses, and sudden deaths began to surface, often coinciding with Thomas's rise in power. Clara's heart raced as she realized that Lillian's death was not an isolated incident. It was part of a larger narrative of darkness that seemed to shroud the Whitmore legacy. What if Thomas's influence stretched beyond just Lillian? She pondered aloud, her mind racing with implications. Just as they were about to take a break, Clara stumbled upon a handwritten journal tucked away in a box labeled Whitmore Family Records. Her heart raced as she carefully opened the leather-bound book, revealing pages filled with Thomas's spidery handwriting. At first glance, the journal appeared to be a chronicle of his thoughts and ambitions. But as she delved deeper, Clara discovered something far more sinister. The entries grew increasingly erratic, filled with paranoia and a growing obsession with maintaining control over his family. He wrote of a fear of betrayal, of enemies lurking in the shadows, and of an unshakable belief that his position of power was always under threat. "Look at this!" Clara exclaimed, her voice barely containing her excitement. Her friends gathered around as she read a particularly chilling passage. "Lillian believes the children laugh at me, but they cannot know what I am capable of. I will not be mocked. I will protect my legacy at all costs." The implications of these words sent chills down their spines, and Clara realized that Thomas's paranoia had extended not only to Lillian, but also to the legacy he sought to create. He saw himself as a guardian, but in reality, he was a tyrant. "Do you think this means he was involved in Lillian's death?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Clara nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of their discoveries. "I think he saw her as a threat to his control. She was an artist of free spirit, and he couldn't stand that." Clara's resolve hardened. The evidence was mounting, and she was determined to bring Lillian's story to light. As the group continued to pore over the journal, Clara stumbled upon a note tucked into the pages, a list of names and dates that seemed to correspond with various tragedies in the community. "This looks like a hit list," Clara murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. He was keeping track of anyone he deemed a threat. The implications of this discovery were staggering, sending a jolt of fear through the group. The storm outside echoed their mounting anxiety, thunder rumbling ominously in the distance. With the rain beginning to pour outside, Clara felt a sense of urgency to leave the historical society and confront the truth head-on. "We need to go back to the house," she declared, her eyes gleaming with determination. "We need to show Lillian that we're not afraid and that we will not let her story be forgotten." Her friends exchanged nervous glances, but Clara could see the resolve in their eyes. They were in this together, and they wouldn't stop until they uncovered the full extent of the Whitmore family's legacy. Back at the Whitmore house, Clara felt the weight of history pressing down upon her as she entered. The atmosphere was charged, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for the revelations to unfold. Clara gathered her friends in the living room, where Lillian's portrait hung like a watchful guardian. "We're here for you, Lillian," Clara said, her voice steady. "We want to honor your memory, to tell your story." As the rain pelted against the windows, Clara felt a surge of energy wash over her. She could almost sense Lillian's presence, guiding her through the process of unveiling the truth. "Let's try the Ouija board again," she suggested, feeling a deep connection to the spirit world. They gathered around the board, the planchette resting in the center, and Clara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to center herself. "Lillian, if you can hear us, we are here to listen," Clara called out, her heart racing with anticipation. The room grew quiet, and the energy shifted as the planchette began to move, slowly at first. Clara held her breath, feeling the weight of expectation in the air. "What do you want us to know?" she asked, her voice a mere whisper. The planchette glided across the board, spelling out TRUTH. Clara's heart soared with hope, realizing that they were finally on the brink of unveiling the truth that had eluded them for so long. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows, but within the walls of the Whitmore house, a sense of determination began to take root. They were ready to confront the darkness, to untangle the threads of Lillian's life, and finally set her spirit free. With each letter spelled out, Clara felt a step closer to revealing the secrets that had haunted the Whitmore family for generations, and she knew they were about to embark on a journey that would change everything. The atmosphere in the Whitmore house had shifted dramatically since Clara and her friends had begun their quest to uncover the truth surrounding Lillian's tragic past. The oppressive energy that had once loomed over the space seemed to have dissipated, replaced by a cautious hope that flickered like a candle's flame in the darkness. As the rain continued to pour outside, Clara felt a growing resolve to confront the spirits that resided within the house, particularly Lillian and the shadow of Thomas that loomed ominously in the background. With the Ouija board in front of them, Clara and her friends gathered closely, forming a tight circle. The planchette sat poised on the board, waiting for their next question. Clara could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She knew that what they were about to do was both a risk and a chance to heal the pain that had been buried for far too long. "We need to ask Lillian what happened to her, to understand how we can help her find peace," she said, her voice steady but tinged with anticipation. Taking a deep breath, Clara placed her fingers lightly on the planchette, her heart pounding in her chest. "Lillian, we are here for you," she began, looking at the eyes of her friends for support. "We want to know the truth about your life and your death. Please, help us understand what happened." The air around them grew thick with tension, a palpable energy swirling as they awaited a response. For a moment, nothing happened. The planchette remained still, as if the spirit they sought to connect with was hesitant to reveal its secrets. Then, just as Clara was about to speak again, the planchette began to move, sliding across the board with surprising speed. Clara's breath caught in her throat as it traced out the letters, FALSE. A chill ran down her spine, and her friends exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you mean, Lillian? What is false?" Clara pressed, urging the spirit to elaborate. The planchette continued its dance, spelling out TRUTH, once again punctuating the complexity of their inquiry. The tug-of-war between the spirits was becoming increasingly apparent. Clara felt the presence of Lillian as a guiding force, but she also sensed Thomas's shadow lurking in the background, a malevolent energy that sought to silence them. "Lillian, can you tell us what you want us to know?" Clara asked again, her voice trembling slightly. The planchette moved in a flurry, spelling out SEH. The urgency in the message was unmistakable, and Clara's heart raced at the thought of what they might uncover next. "I think she wants us to look for something," Clara said, her brow furrowing in concentration. "But what? What are we supposed to see?" The group fell silent, pondering the cryptic message. After a moment, Sarah suggested, "Maybe we should search the house again. There might be something we missed." Clara nodded in agreement, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The answer lay somewhere within these walls, hidden among the echoes of the past. They began their search in earnest, combing through every room of the house, opening drawers, and examining the ornate furniture for any signs of a hidden secret. Clara's heart raced as they moved from room to room, the sense of urgency palpable. In the attic, a space that had once felt claustrophobic and oppressive now seemed alive with possibility. Dust motes floated in the shafts of light that broke through the slats of the window, illuminating forgotten relics from the past. It was there, among the cobweb-covered boxes, that Clara found an old trunk locked tight. Its weathered exterior spoke of years gone by, and an inexplicable pull drew her toward it. "I think this could be it," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "This might hold the answers we've been searching for." Clara felt the weight of her friends' gazes on her as she began to search for a way to open the trunk. After several moments of fruitless searching, Sarah exclaimed, "I saw a key hanging on the wall in the hallway earlier." With newfound determination, Clara dashed downstairs to retrieve the key, her heart pounding in anticipation. She hurried back to the attic, her friends close behind, and inserted the key into the lock. With a satisfying click, the trunk creaked open, revealing its hidden treasures. Inside, they discovered a collection of Lillian's sketches, vivid illustrations that depicted moments from her life, some joyful, others hauntingly dark. As they flipped through the pages, Clara felt as if she was peering into Lillian's soul. The artwork expressed the depth of her emotions, capturing both the beauty of her artistic spirit and the pain of her entrapment. One sketch in particular stood out, a haunting image of a woman standing in front of a door, the shadows creeping behind her like sinister tendrils. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the figure. It was Lillian herself, poised at the threshold between light and darkness. "Look at this," Clara said, holding the sketch up for her friends to see. It's like she knew what was coming. She was trapped between two worlds. The realization hung in the air, heavy with meaning. It was a chilling reminder of the duality of Lillian's existence, a woman torn between her desires and the oppressive reality of her life. Clara felt a surge of empathy for the artist who had suffered in silence, her spirit yearning for freedom. As they continued to explore the trunk, Clara uncovered a hidden compartment at the bottom filled with letters. The letters were penned in Thomas's handwriting, filled with his twisted thoughts and oppressive commands directed at Lillian. "You will be mine, Lillian," one letter read, filled with possessive declarations that echoed Thomas's jealousy and paranoia. "You are my muse, and you will not escape." The anger that surged through Clara was palpable. These letters painted a clear picture of a man who had manipulated and controlled Lillian, turning her art into a prison rather than a source of expression. The group fell silent as they processed the weight of this discovery. Clara knew they had stumbled upon something profound, evidence of Thomas's psychological manipulation that extended far beyond their previous assumptions. "This is what we needed to see," Clara murmured, her heart racing with a mix of triumph and sorrow. "This is Lillian's truth." She felt a sense of clarity wash over her, understanding that their journey was about more than just uncovering the past. It was about honoring Lillian's spirit and the legacy she had left behind. With their newfound knowledge in hand, Clara and her friends gathered once more around the Ouija board. They needed to communicate their discoveries to Lillian, to assure her that they understood her pain and were committed to seeking justice. Clara took a deep breath, channeling the strength she had felt during their earlier sessions. "Lillian, we found your art. We understand now what you went through, and we promise to share your story," she said, her voice firm with conviction. The planchette moved slowly across the board, spelling out FRE. Clara's heart soared at the response, recognizing it as Lillian's acknowledgement of their commitment to her legacy. She felt a warmth enveloping her, a sign that they were on the right path. The storm outside raged on, but within the Whitmore house, a newfound hope blossomed, fueled by the connection between Clara and the spirit of Lillian. The revelations of the past had forged an unbreakable bond among the group, one that would guide them forward in their quest for justice. Clara understood that the journey was far from over. They would need to confront the legacy of Thomas Whitmore and ensure that Lillian's story was no longer silenced. With renewed determination, they set out to honor Lillian, vowing to share her truth and bring light to the darkness that had overshadowed the Whitmore family for too long. Armed with the revelations they had unearthed, Clara and her friends felt a renewed sense of purpose as they gathered in the living room of the Whitmore house. The weight of their discoveries pressed upon them, a reminder of the urgency to set Lillian's spirit free from the shackles of her past. The atmosphere in the room was thick with anticipation. They had spent countless hours delving into Lillian's story, but now it was time to share it with the world. The time for silence had ended, and the need for justice had ignited a fire within each of them. Clara looked around at her friends, each of them reflecting the resolve she felt in her heart. "We need to make sure that Lillian's story is told," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "We can't let what happened to her be forgotten. We have to reach out to the community and hold Thomas's legacy accountable." Ethan, always the practical thinker, chimed in. "But how do we do that? We have the evidence. But will people believe us?" His skepticism was valid. Clara understood the weight of public perception, especially in a small town where reputations often took precedence over truth. Sarah, ever the optimist, suggested, "We could hold an art exhibit featuring Lillian's sketches. We can frame them alongside the letters we found. It'll be a way to showcase her work while also telling her story." Clara felt a surge of inspiration at the idea. Yes, an exhibit would not only honor Lillian's memory, but also draw attention to the darkness she faced. As they brainstormed the details, excitement filled the room, temporarily overshadowing the dread that had once hung heavily in the air. Planning the exhibit became their top priority. They set a date and began to reach out to local galleries, seeking a space to showcase Lillian's art and share her story. Clara took the lead, contacting the Historical Society to request support in publicizing the event. To her surprise, they expressed a keen interest in collaborating, eager to shed light on the tragic history that had unfolded within their community. Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Lillian's spirit seemed to be guiding them, pushing them forward. As the date of the exhibit approached, Clara and her friends worked tirelessly to prepare. They spent hours framing the sketches and meticulously organizing the letters, determined to present Lillian's story in a way that would resonate with their audience. Clara knew that the impact of the exhibit would hinge on their ability to convey the emotional weight of Lillian's experiences while also highlighting Thomas's oppressive control. The duality of their narrative was crucial. They wanted to honor Lillian as an artist while also holding her tormentor accountable for his actions. The night of the exhibit arrived, and the gallery buzzed with energy. Clara's heart raced as she looked around at the crowd, a mix of familiar faces and newcomers eager to learn about Lillian's life. The walls were adorned with her sketches, each piece speaking volumes about her artistry and the struggles she faced. Clara stood beside a large canvas depicting Lillian in front of the door, the same sketch that had resonated with her in the attic. It was a powerful representation of her internal battle, and Clara felt a deep connection to the artist as she stood before it. As guests began to arrive, Clara felt a swell of pride. She moved through the gallery, engaging with attendees and sharing Lillian's story. The letters hung nearby, their words echoing Thomas's control and manipulation. Clara spoke passionately, weaving together the narrative of Lillian's life and the injustices she had faced. As she recounted Lillian's journey, she noticed the audience's reactions. Some were visibly moved, while others seemed skeptical. It was a reminder of the challenge they faced in shifting public perception and uncovering the truth. Midway through the evening, a tall figure approached Clara. It was Mr. Henderson, the local historian who had shown interest in their research. He regarded her with a mix of curiosity and caution. "You've presented a compelling case, Clara," he said slowly. "But I worry about the backlash from the community. Thomas Whitmore was revered here, and many will struggle to accept the idea that he could have harmed anyone." Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She knew he was right, but she also felt a fierce determination to confront the past. "We can't let fear silence us," Clara replied, her voice steady. "Lillian's story deserves to be told, no matter how uncomfortable it may make people. If we don't speak up, her memory will continue to be overshadowed by the lies and secrets." Mr. Henderson regarded her thoughtfully, his expression softening. "You're right, of course, but we must be prepared for the consequences." Clara nodded, her heart racing at the thought of what was to come. She knew the truth was powerful, but it also had the potential to shake the very foundations of their community. As the night wore on, more attendees arrived, drawn by the whispers of Lillian's story. Clara's friends moved through the crowd, engaging with guests and sharing their findings. The exhibit sparked conversations, and Clara could sense a shift in the atmosphere, a collective realization that the past could no longer remain hidden. With each story shared, the weight of Thomas's legacy began to crumble, and Lillian's spirit grew stronger. As the evening came to a close, Clara gathered her friends to reflect on their journey. "I can't believe we did this," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We shared Lillian's story, and people listened. It feels like we're finally honoring her memory." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "We did this together, and it was worth every moment." Ethan nodded in agreement, though his brow was furrowed with concern. "But what now? We've opened the door, and I worry about what will come next." Clara felt a flicker of anxiety at Ethan's words. They had unearthed something powerful, but with that power came uncertainty. The community would have to grapple with the truth, and not everyone would be ready to accept it. "Whatever happens, we need to stay united," she said firmly. "We've committed to Lillian's memory, and we can't back down now." Her friends nodded in agreement, the bond they had forged throughout this journey strengthening their resolve. As they left the gallery, Clara felt a profound sense of purpose. They had confronted the shadows of the past and begun to unravel the truth behind Lillian's story. But the path ahead was still fraught with challenges, and Clara knew they would need to brace themselves for the storm that was sure to follow. With Lillian's spirit guiding them, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead, determined to bring justice not only for Lillian, but for every voice that had been silenced in the shadows of history. In the days following the exhibit, the town of Hawthorne found itself enveloped in a swirling tide of whispers and heated discussions. Clara and her friends had set the stage for a confrontation with the past, But they soon realized that the echoes of Lillian's story reverberated much louder than they had anticipated. The once quiet streets of Hawthorne buzzed with chatter about the revelations concerning Thomas Whitmore, his legacy, and the tragic fate of the woman whose art had once graced the walls of the very homes that now debated her worth. Clara felt both a sense of triumph and an undercurrent of anxiety as the implications of their actions began to take shape. In the wake of the exhibit, Clara had become a reluctant figurehead in the town's discourse. At first, she had relished the role of advocate for Lillian, but as the discussions intensified, so too did the scrutiny she faced. Some townsfolk lauded her courage for bringing Lillian's story to light, while others viewed her with disdain, accusing her of tarnishing the reputation of a respected family. Clara often found herself at the center of heated debates in local coffee shops and community gatherings. Each encounter chipped away at her initial excitement, replacing it with a nagging sense of doubt about the path they had chosen. The tension reached a boiling point during a town hall meeting called to discuss the fallout from the exhibit. Clara, along with her friends, attended with a mix of apprehension and determination. The atmosphere in the room was charged, a palpable clash of loyalty and justice. As Clara sat among the residents of Hawthorne, she could feel the weight of history pressing down on them, like a thick fog that obscured their vision of the truth. The meeting began, and voices rose and fell like the tide, some calling for understanding and healing, while others demanded that Clara retract her statements about Thomas and apologize for what they perceived as slander. Lillian was just a troubled artist. An elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson argued passionately, her voice quavering with emotion. Her art reflected her struggles, but that doesn't mean she was mistreated by Thomas. You're painting a narrative that doesn't align with the history we know. Clara's heart raced at the personal nature of the attack, but she took a deep breath and spoke up, her voice steady. "We've uncovered evidence that speaks to a different reality, Mrs. Thompson. Lillian's letters and art reveal a life lived in fear, and it's our responsibility to acknowledge that truth." The murmurs of dissent rose again, but Clara pressed on, emboldened by the memories of Lillian's spirit. Across the room, Clara noticed Ethan's worried expression, and she could feel the anxiety radiating from her friends. They had ventured into uncharted territory, and she realized that this was not just about Lillian anymore. It was about challenging deeply ingrained beliefs within their community. With each exchange, Clara felt the stakes rising, but she also sensed that they were not alone in their fight. More and more residents began to nod in agreement, murmuring affirmations of support, and Clara seized the moment, urging them to embrace Lillian's truth rather than hide from it. Lillian's story is not just hers. It's part of all of us, Clara declared, her voice rising above the din. It's a reminder that we must confront our past to build a better future. If we allow fear to silence the truth, we do a disservice to everyone who has ever felt trapped in their own life. Her words seemed to resonate, striking a chord with those who had come to hear both sides of the argument. Clara felt a surge of hope, but she also understood the precarious balance they were treading. The memories of Thomas loomed large, and for many, challenging that legacy meant dismantling their own narratives about the past. As the meeting continued, the tide began to shift. Voices once filled with anger began to soften, and more townsfolk stepped forward to share their experiences. Stories of family dynamics that mirrored Lillian's own struggles, whispers of abuse hidden behind closed doors, and the harsh reality that sometimes the people we admire can harbor dark secrets. Clara listened intently as the stories unfolded, feeling a sense of camaraderie with the community that had once felt so divided. It became evident that Lillian's narrative had opened the door for others to confront their truths, unearthing a shared pain that had lingered for too long in silence. As the meeting drew to a close, Clara was met with a mix of applause and hesitation. Many had rallied behind her cause, but there were still voices of dissent, murmuring doubts about whether Thomas's legacy could truly be dismantled. Clara understood their concerns, but felt a growing sense of urgency. "This isn't just about Lillian," she reiterated, glancing at her friends who stood by her side. "It's about creating a space where we can speak openly about our struggles and support one another." If we don't confront the shadows of our past, we risk repeating them. After the meeting, Clara and her friends left the hall feeling both invigorated and exhausted. The conversations that had unfolded had sparked something within them, an understanding that their journey was not just about justice for Lillian, but also about healing the community as a whole. Clara could sense that the momentum was building, and she felt an overwhelming desire to harness it. They had begun to peel back the layers of denial that had long shielded the truth, but the work was far from over. In the following weeks, Clara and her friends organized support groups to encourage open dialogue about mental health and relationships in the community. They invited local artists to contribute to the conversations, creating a space where creativity could flourish alongside healing. Clara often found herself facilitating discussions, sharing her own vulnerabilities and encouraging others to do the same. The transformation within the community was palpable, as individuals began to connect over shared experiences, bridging the gap that had once separated them. As the support groups gained traction, Clara noticed a subtle shift in how the town viewed Lillian's legacy. The narrative surrounding her life began to evolve from one of tragedy to one of resilience and empowerment. Lillian's sketches, once a representation of despair, transformed into symbols of strength, inspiring others to share their stories and advocate for change. Clara felt a sense of fulfillment as the community embraced this newfound perspective, realizing that Lillian's spirit was alive within them, urging them to break free from the shadows of their past. Yet, amidst this progress, Clara remained acutely aware of the lingering challenges. Thomas's family, once a powerful presence in Hawthorne, began to push back against the narrative Clara and her friends had constructed. Rumors circulated, suggesting that they would seek to discredit the exhibit and challenge the validity of their findings. Clara felt the tension building again, a storm brewing on the horizon that threatened to overshadow the strides they had made. But she refused to back down, knowing that the fight for Lillian's truth was far from over. As the days turned into weeks, Clara resolved to prepare for whatever backlash might come. She and her friends began to gather additional evidence, reaching out to historians and researchers who could provide context to Lillian's story and Thomas's influence on the community. They meticulously documented their findings, ready to confront the challenges that lay ahead. Clara knew that this journey was not just about seeking justice for Lillian. It was about illuminating the shadows that had long concealed the truths of their community. The dawn of a new chapter in Hawthorne had begun, but the road ahead was uncertain. Clara felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but she also felt the unwavering support of her friends and the community that had rallied around Lillian's legacy. As she stood at the crossroads of their fight for truth and justice, Clara knew that they had ignited a spark that could not be extinguished. They were united in purpose, ready to face the storm together, with Lillian's spirit guiding them every step of the way. The days that followed the town hall meeting felt like a pendulum swinging between hope and fear. Clara and her friends had ignited a movement within Hawthorne, one that sought to confront the dark truths of their history and bring light to the injustices faced by Lillian Whitmore. Yet, as they took steps toward healing, it became increasingly evident that the opposition was not going to retreat quietly. The Whitmore family, once regarded as the pillars of the community, had begun to mobilize against them. Clara could sense the tension thickening in the air, like the stillness before a storm. Rumors circulated like wildfire throughout Hawthorne, painting Clara and her friends as troublemakers intent on upending the social order. Clara had expected some resistance. After all, they were challenging a deeply entrenched narrative. What she hadn't anticipated was the fervor with which the opposition would fight to protect the Whitmore legacy. Clara began receiving anonymous messages, some filled with threats, others with accusations of distorting the truth. Each new message stung, a reminder of the personal risks they were taking. Yet, Clara understood that to be silent was to allow Lillian's story to fade once again into obscurity. In the face of mounting pressure, Clara and her friends leaned on each other for support. They spent countless hours in the Whitmore house, poring over Lillian's letters and sketches, trying to uncover more truths that could bolster their case. Each new detail felt like a breadcrumb leading them closer to the heart of the matter. Clara's resolve strengthened as she felt Lillian's presence guiding them, urging them to persist. It was during one of these late-night sessions that Ethan stumbled upon a forgotten letter tucked between the pages of an old sketchbook. The letter was addressed to Lillian, but had never been sent. Its contents were haunting. It spoke of Lillian's feelings of entrapment, her desperate yearning for freedom, and her dreams of a life beyond the confines of the Whitmore estate. Clara felt a chill run down her spine as she read the words. They painted a vivid picture of Lillian's inner turmoil, confirming their worst fears about the suffocating hold Thomas had on her life. "This changes everything," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet room. "We need to share this with the community." The next day, Clara and her friends organized an emergency meeting to discuss their findings. They gathered in the town library, a space that had once served as a refuge for Lillian in her youth. As they assembled, Clara could feel the weight of the moment. They were not just sharing information. They were weaving a tapestry of Lillian's life that would serve as the foundation for their ongoing fight. Clara presented the new letter, reading it aloud with a trembling voice. The impact was immediate. The room fell silent as the words sank in, the gravity of Lillian's experience settling heavily on everyone present. As Clara spoke, she noticed a shift among the group. The initial skepticism that had colored some of their discussions began to fade, replaced by a collective understanding of the complexity of Lillian's story. It was not just about her art or her tragic end. It was about the very real, emotional, and psychological struggles she had faced. One by one, her friends began to share their thoughts, reflecting on their own experiences with mental health and the importance of breaking the silence around it. Clara felt a swell of hope, realizing that they were not just advocating for Lillian. They were creating a dialogue that could bring healing to the entire community. The meeting concluded with a renewed sense of purpose, and Clara felt the fire within her reignite. They needed to amplify their message, and the best way to do that was to harness the power of storytelling. They decided to organize a public reading of Lillian's letters and a display of her artwork at the community center. The event would serve as both an homage to Lillian and a platform for open discussion about mental health, relationships, and the impact of trauma. Clara knew that vulnerability was their greatest strength, and the more they shared Lillian's story, the more they could help others find their voices. As the date of the reading approached, Clara and her friends worked tirelessly to prepare. They reached out to local artists and mental health advocates, inviting them to participate in the event and lend their support. Clara felt a sense of camaraderie as the community began to rally around Lillian's legacy. She was buoyed by the realization that they were not alone in their fight. The collective spirit of those who had faced their own struggles emerged, bringing strength and solidarity to their cause. However, amidst the growing support, the Whitmore family's resistance became more pronounced. Clara began to receive warnings from friends who were hesitant to get involved, fearing backlash from those who were loyal to the Whitmores. "You have to be careful, Clara," one of her friends urged. "People here are loyal to the family. You might be putting yourself in danger." Clara acknowledged the concerns, but felt a deeper calling. She understood that they were standing at a crossroads, where the truth and the status quo collided. "I won't let fear dictate our actions," she replied firmly. "We owe it to Lillian to fight for her truth." On the day of the reading, the community center buzzed with energy. Clara stood at the entrance, greeting attendees as they arrived. Some were familiar faces, while others were newcomers eager to learn about Lillian's story. As she looked around the room, Clara felt a surge of gratitude. They had managed to create a safe space where people could come together to honor Lillian and confront the issues that had long been swept under the rug. The event began with Clara introducing the purpose of the gathering. Her heart raced as she spoke, but she felt a sense of purpose grounding her. "Today, we honor Lillian Whitmore, not just as an artist, but as a woman whose story deserves to be told. This is a space for healing, for truth, and for breaking the silence." Clara's words were met with a mix of applause and a few uneasy murmurs, but she pressed on, determined to create an atmosphere of openness. As the readings commenced, Clara felt the weight of Lillian's story enveloping the room. Her friends took turns reading letters aloud, each word resonating deeply with the audience. Clara could see the emotions flickering across faces: sadness, anger, empathy. The readings served as a catalyst, encouraging attendees to reflect on their own lives and the struggles they faced. With each letter, Clara felt Lillian's spirit shining brighter, guiding them all toward understanding and connection. However, as the event unfolded, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She spotted a small group of Whitmore loyalists lingering near the back of the room. Their expressions hardened. The tension in the air thickened, and Clara realized that the storm she had anticipated was finally upon them. She steeled herself, reminding herself that they were fighting for something far greater than her own comfort. Lillian's story was about breaking free from fear, and Clara refused to let intimidation stifle their progress. As the readings concluded, Clara opened the floor for discussion. She encouraged anyone who wanted to share their own experiences or insights to step forward. The atmosphere in the room shifted as attendees began to speak. One by one, they shared their stories, tales of resilience, struggles with mental health, and the impact of societal expectations on their lives. Clara listened intently, her heart swelling with pride for the community that was coming together to break the silence. This was what they had hoped for, a safe space for healing. But just as the conversation began to flow freely, one of the Whitmore loyalists stood up, interrupting the discussion. "You're twisting Lillian's story to fit your narrative," she shouted, her voice filled with anger. "Thomas was a good man. You're disrespecting his memory." Clara felt her heart sink, but she refused to back down. "We're not here to disrespect anyone. We're here to honor Lillian's truth, which has been hidden for too long." The room fell silent, tension crackling like static in the air. Clara took a deep breath, grounding herself in the mission they had embarked upon. As the loyalists continued to rant, Clara felt a wave of determination wash over her. This was precisely why they needed to have these conversations, to confront the fear and denial that had long permeated their community. Lillian deserves to be remembered as she was, a talented artist who fought against the shadows, Clara asserted, her voice steady. "We're not denying Thomas's impact on this town, but we cannot ignore the reality of what happened behind closed doors. This is a conversation we need to have, not just for Lillian, but for ourselves." The atmosphere shifted again as other attendees began to rally behind Clara. They spoke up, sharing their own frustrations about the culture of silence that had allowed Thomas's actions to go unchecked. Clara felt a sense of solidarity forming in the room, a collective resolve to confront the uncomfortable truths they had long avoided. The loyalists' anger had only fueled their determination, and Clara knew they were gaining momentum. As the evening drew to a close, Clara felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. They had faced opposition head-on and created a space for open dialogue. The community was beginning to embrace the complexity of Lillian's story, recognizing that it was a reflection of their own struggles. Clara understood that their journey was far from over. They still had to navigate the impending storm from the Whitmore family. Yet in that moment, surrounded by a community ready to confront the past, Clara felt a glimmer of hope that the tide was turning, and Lillian's spirit was alive and well within them. The aftermath of the community reading resonated throughout Hawthorne, like the pealing of a church bell, reverberating in both familiar and unexpected ways. Clara's heart raced as she took in the responses from those who had attended the event. The energy of the room had shifted. It was no longer a gathering mired in the past, but rather a crucible of transformation where healing began to take root. Yet, even as the community started to embrace Lillian's legacy, Clara felt the specter of the Whitmore family looming ever larger. The stage was set for a reckoning that would challenge the very fabric of their community. In the days following the reading, the townsfolk engaged in discussions that reached far beyond the confines of the community center. Clara began to notice small changes. Conversations about mental health were no longer whispered in corners, but openly discussed over coffee in the local diner. The newspaper ran a feature story on Lillian's art and her life, highlighting Clara's efforts to bring attention to issues that had long been overlooked. Clara found herself at the center of a burgeoning movement, a wave of advocacy fueled by the desire to confront the uncomfortable truths of their past. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely scratching the surface. Meanwhile, the Whitmore family did not remain silent for long. Clara received word that they were planning a counter-exhibit, one that would celebrate Thomas Whitmore's contributions to the arts and the community. This announcement sent ripples of anxiety through Clara and her friends. The Whitmores were a powerful family, and their influence could easily sway public opinion. "We need to be prepared," Clara said during a strategy meeting with her friends. "If they're going to paint Thomas as a saint, we have to ensure the truth doesn't get lost in the narrative." With a sense of urgency, Clara and her friends began compiling further evidence to strengthen their case. They dug deeper into Lillian's life, connecting with historians, local artists, and mental health professionals who could contribute their perspectives on the impact of art in addressing trauma. Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose as they navigated the intricacies of their research. Every sketch they unearthed, every letter they analyzed, was a step closer to illuminating the complexities of Lillian's life. As the day of the Whitmore family's counter-exhibit approached, Clara organized a community meeting to discuss their strategy. The tension in the air was palpable, a mix of excitement and dread as they gathered in the familiar library. Clara stood before the group, her heart pounding as she began to outline their plan. "We can't allow the Whitmores to control the narrative. We need to show the community that Lillian's story is not just about tragedy. It's about resilience and the importance of speaking out." The room erupted in murmurs of agreement, a collective understanding that they were standing on the precipice of a battle that would define their community. The night of the Whitmore exhibit arrived, and Clara felt a whirlwind of emotions as she and her friends prepared to attend. They had decided to confront the event head-on, armed with Lillian's story and their newfound resolve. The venue, a grand hall adorned with elegant decorations, stood in stark contrast to the atmosphere Clara had hoped to create with her own upcoming exhibit. As they entered, Clara could see the Whitmore family mingling among their supporters, an aura of entitlement surrounding them. Clara's stomach twisted at the sight, but she steeled herself for the fight ahead. As the evening unfolded, Clara and her friends quietly observed the festivities, their hearts racing with anticipation. The speeches commenced, with members of the Whitmore family extolling Thomas's virtues, portraying him as a benevolent figure whose legacy had shaped the town. Clara felt a surge of anger as the familiar narrative unfolded, a distortion of the truth that had been carefully crafted over the years. She knew they had to act before it was too late. Just as the evening seemed to reach its peak, Clara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the applause. "Excuse me," she began, her tone calm yet assertive. "I can't remain silent while this community is led to believe that Thomas Whitmore was without flaws. His legacy is intertwined with the life of Lillian, a talented artist whose story deserves to be heard." Gasps echoed through the crowd, and Clara could feel the tension spike. The audience shifted, torn between the familiarity of the Whitmore narrative and the compelling truth Clara was offering. As Clara continued, she felt the support of her friends bolstering her courage. Lillian's letters reveal a life of struggle, one that cannot be separated from Thomas's influence, she asserted. "We must acknowledge the complexities of their relationship to truly honor Lillian's legacy. We cannot allow fear of discomfort to silence her truth." Clara's words hung in the air, a challenge to the audience's perceptions and a call to embrace the full spectrum of Lillian's story. The room buzzed with conversation as Clara's message sank in. Some attendees nodded in agreement, while others whispered amongst themselves, their loyalty to the Whitmores tested. Clara could feel the tide shifting as murmurs of discontent filled the air. Just as Clara felt the momentum building, a voice rang out from the back of the room. It was one of the Whitmore loyalists, visibly upset. "You're disrespecting Thomas's memory. You don't know anything about what he did for this town." The loyalist's outburst sparked a wave of tension in the room, but Clara remained resolute. "I'm not here to disrespect anyone," she responded, her voice steady. "I'm here to ensure that Lillian's story is acknowledged, that her truth is part of this community's history. We cannot celebrate one person's legacy at the expense of another's suffering." Clara's gaze swept across the crowd, meeting the eyes of those who had been inspired by Lillian's story. She felt a connection, a shared understanding that transcended the animosity swirling around her. As the Loyalist attempted to retort, Clara's friends rallied around her, voicing their support and echoing the importance of Lillian's narrative. The debate quickly escalated into a passionate discussion, the room alive with voices both defending and challenging the Whitmore legacy. Clara felt a rush of adrenaline as she witnessed the community grappling with the complexities of their shared history. This was the reckoning she had hoped for, a confrontation that could shatter the silence and usher in a new understanding. In that moment of chaos and emotion, Clara recognized the profound significance of their struggle. They were no longer simply fighting for Lillian's memory. They were paving the way for a new era in Hawthorne, one where truth and vulnerability could coexist. The battle was far from over, but as voices rose and arguments flowed, Clara knew that they were forging a path toward healing. The storm had finally arrived, and within its fury, Clara found the strength to stand firm, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead in their pursuit of justice for Lillian. The fallout from the Whitmore exhibit was immediate and profound, sending tremors through the fabric of Hawthorne. Clara and her friends had ignited a firestorm, one that exposed the complexities of their town's history and challenged the revered legacy of the Whitmore family. In the days that followed the confrontation, Clara found herself at the epicenter of a whirlwind of discussions, debates, and accusations. People began to question their own loyalties and the narratives they had accepted for so long. The community was awakening, and with that awakening came both hope and fear. In the aftermath of her bold declaration at the exhibit, Clara noticed a palpable shift in the atmosphere of Hawthorne. The coffee shop buzzed with conversations that were no longer just small talk. They were deep, probing discussions about Lillian, Thomas, and the implications of their intertwined fates. Clara felt a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation as she watched the community grapple with the realities of their shared history. The very act of speaking out had begun to unravel the tightly wound threads of silence that had cloaked the town for generations. As Clara and her friends met to strategize their next steps, they realized that the momentum was shifting in their favor. "We need to capitalize on this energy," Ethan said, his eyes sparkling with determination. "People are ready to talk about Lillian and what she went through. Let's plan an art showcase that highlights her work and incorporates these discussions about mental health and trauma." Clara nodded, feeling a surge of hope. They were no longer just a group of friends fighting for justice. They were becoming a movement, a catalyst for change. The planning for the art showcase began in earnest, with Clara and her friends reaching out to local artists, mental health advocates, and community members who had been touched by Lillian's story. They envisioned a space that would not only display Lillian's artwork, but also invite attendees to share their own stories. Clara's heart raced as she envisioned the walls adorned with Lillian's vibrant, haunting pieces, each telling a fragment of her narrative, juxtaposed with testimonies of those who had faced similar struggles. It was an opportunity for healing, a chance for the community to unite in their shared experiences. However, as preparations continued, Clara sensed a growing unease among her friends. Despite the excitement surrounding the showcase, there was an undercurrent of anxiety, a lingering fear of the Whitmore family's response. Clara understood that they were not merely dealing with a familial legacy. They were challenging a powerful social structure that had long upheld the Whitmores as untouchable. "We have to be careful," Emily warned during one of their meetings. "If the Whitmores feel threatened, they might do anything to undermine us." Clara took a deep breath, knowing Emily's concerns were valid, but she also understood that they had come too far to turn back now. In an effort to quell the growing tension, Clara sought the counsel of Marjorie, the town historian who had supported their cause since the beginning. Clara visited Marjorie in her cluttered office, filled with books, artifacts, and framed photographs of Hawthorne's past. "I'm worried about what the Whitmores might do next," Clara confessed, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Marjorie leaned back in her chair, her eyes glinting with wisdom. "Change is always met with resistance, Clara. The key is to stay focused on your mission. You're giving voice to those who've been silenced for too long. Remember that the truth has a way of prevailing." As Clara left Marjorie's office, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She returned to the planning meetings with a determination to amplify their message, refusing to let fear dictate their actions. The art showcase would serve as a platform for vulnerability and strength, allowing the community to confront the uncomfortable truths about their history. Clara envisioned an opening night filled with conversation, creativity, and catharsis. The showcase was set to open in a week, and the anticipation in the air was electric. As the day of the showcase approached, Clara found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, she was eager to celebrate Lillian's life and the stories that had emerged from their collective effort. On the other hand, the looming presence of the Whitmore family weighed heavily on her mind. The town was a tinderbox, and Clara couldn't shake the feeling that tensions would escalate, especially given the volatility of the situation. The opening night finally arrived, and the community center buzzed with energy. Clara stood at the entrance, her heart pounding as people began to filter in. The walls were adorned with Lillian's artwork, each piece a testament to her pain and resilience. Clara felt an overwhelming sense of pride as she watched attendees marvel at the intricacies of Lillian's art, each stroke a window into her soul. It was a celebration, but Clara knew it was also a reckoning. This night was not just about art. It was about reclaiming a narrative that had long been suppressed. As the crowd grew, Clara took to the stage, her heart racing with anticipation. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "We gather not only to celebrate the art of Lillian Whitmore, but also to honor her story, a story that has been too long hidden in the shadows. Tonight, we invite you to share your own experiences, to connect with one another in a space where vulnerability is not just accepted but celebrated." Clara's words hung in the air, a call to arms for the community to engage in open dialogue. As the evening unfolded, people began to share their stories, weaving their narratives into the tapestry of Lillian's life. Clara felt a surge of hope as she witnessed the transformation occurring in the room. Strangers became friends as they connected over shared experiences of struggle, loss, and healing. The air was thick with emotion, the walls of the community center echoing with the sounds of laughter, tears, and heartfelt discussions. Clara realized that this was the change they had envisioned, a collective embrace of truth and healing. Yet, just as the evening reached its peak, Clara noticed a familiar figure lurking at the back of the room. It was Margaret Whitmore, Thomas's sister, her expression a mix of fury and disbelief. Clara's heart sank as she met Margaret's gaze. This was the confrontation she had anticipated, and she steeled herself for whatever might come next. As Margaret stepped forward, the room fell silent, a collective breath held in anticipation. "What you're doing here is a disgrace," Margaret shouted, her voice piercing through the atmosphere. "You're tarnishing my brother's name for the sake of a lie." Clara felt the tension in the room shift once more, the atmosphere thickening with unease. "Margaret, we're not here to attack Thomas," Clara replied, her voice calm yet firm. "We're here to honor Lillian's truth. It's time for all of us to confront the realities of our history, no matter how uncomfortable they may be." Margaret's eyes blazed with anger as she stepped closer, and Clara could feel the crowd's apprehension. "You think you know her? You don't understand what she went through." Margaret's voice trembled with emotion. "You're twisting everything to fit your narrative." Clara stood her ground, feeling the weight of Lillian's story behind her. "I'm not twisting anything, Margaret. I'm giving Lillian a voice she never had. We owe it to her to acknowledge the complexities of her life." In that moment, Clara realized that the fight was not just about Lillian. It was about the entire community grappling with their past. The confrontation had opened the floodgates, and the crowd began to murmur, their collective energy shifting from tension to solidarity. Clara felt a wave of support as attendees started to voice their own thoughts, echoing the sentiment that the community needed to face its history, both good and bad. As the evening continued, Clara understood that they were standing at a crossroads. The Whitmore family's legacy was crumbling under the weight of truth, and it was clear that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. But in that moment, as voices rose in support of Lillian's story, Clara felt a surge of hope. They were no longer alone. They were part of a movement that could change the narrative of their town forever. With each story shared, each truth acknowledged, the threads of silence began to unravel, and Clara knew that they were paving the way for a new chapter in Hawthorne's history, one where truth, healing, and community could finally flourish. In the days following the transformative art showcase, the town of Hawthorne found itself at a pivotal crossroads, teetering between the nostalgia of its storied past and the urgent need for a new narrative. Clara's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and anxiety as she navigated the aftermath of the event. The echoes of Margaret Whitmore's outburst lingered in the air, reverberating through the town's social fabric like an unresolved chord. Clara was acutely aware that the fight for truth was far from over. It had merely entered a new phase, one that required tenacity and courage. As the community continued to process the revelations brought to light at the showcase, conversations around town began to shift. People who had previously held steadfast beliefs about the Whitmore family were now questioning their loyalties and examining the implications of their past. Clara found herself receiving phone calls and messages from individuals eager to share their own stories that had been hidden away for too long, echoing the themes of Lillian's life. It was a moment of reckoning, and Clara knew it was essential to create a safe space for these discussions to flourish. Recognizing the need for continued dialogue, Clara organized a series of community workshops aimed at fostering conversations about mental health, trauma, and the power of art as a medium for healing. The workshops would allow participants to explore their emotions in a supportive environment, offering a cathartic outlet for those grappling with their own stories. As Clara collaborated with local mental health professionals to design the curriculum, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was more than just a response to the Whitmore family's influence. It was a commitment to building a community grounded in empathy and understanding. The first workshop was scheduled for the following week, and Clara poured her energy into promoting it throughout the town. Flyers adorned community boards, social media buzzed with excitement, and word of mouth spread like wildfire. Clara felt the weight of expectation on her shoulders, knowing that the success of these workshops could either galvanize the community or send it spiraling back into silence. She could not afford to fail. Too much was at stake, not only for herself but for Lillian's legacy and the voices of those who had been silenced. As the day of the workshop arrived, Clara's heart raced with anticipation and trepidation. The community center, once a backdrop for whispered conversations, now buzzed with energy as participants trickled in. Clara greeted each person warmly, sensing their apprehension and eagerness. She understood that many were stepping outside their comfort zones, prepared to confront difficult emotions and share their stories. "Thank you all for coming," Clara began, her voice steady yet filled with warmth. "This space is yours, and it's a safe haven for honesty and vulnerability. We're here to listen to one another and to heal together." The workshop unfolded like a tapestry of interconnected lives, with each participant sharing their unique experiences. Clara watched as people connected over shared struggles, weaving a rich narrative of resilience and hope. She facilitated discussions about the importance of recognizing trauma and its impact on mental health, urging participants to explore their feelings through art, writing, and conversation. As stories flowed, Clara could feel the walls that had kept the community divided slowly crumbling away, replaced by a collective sense of understanding. However, amidst the hopeful atmosphere, Clara couldn't shake the lingering anxiety over the Whitmore family's reaction. She had heard whispers that Margaret was rallying support, and Clara understood the threat that posed. The workshops were gaining traction, but they were also drawing the ire of those who preferred to keep the past buried. Clara resolved to remain vigilant, knowing that the more they spoke out, the more resistance they would likely encounter. As the weeks went by, the workshops continued to grow, drawing more participants and inspiring deeper conversations. Clara felt a sense of purpose as she witnessed the healing power of vulnerability and connection. Yet, she remained acutely aware of the undercurrents of opposition. Margaret Whitmore's presence loomed over the community like a dark cloud, and Clara knew that the Whitmore family would not take this challenge lightly. One evening, As Clara was wrapping up a workshop, she received an unexpected call from Marjorie, the town historian. "Clara, we need to talk," Marjorie said, her voice urgent. "I've heard some unsettling news about the Whitmores. They're planning a public statement to discredit your efforts and undermine the workshops." Clara's heart sank. The thought of being vilified in public was daunting, but she also felt a fire ignite within her. "We can't let them silence us," Clara replied, determination fueling her resolve. "We need to counter their narrative before it gains momentum." With Marjorie's support, Clara organized a town hall meeting to address the community's growing concerns and counter the Whitmores' impending statement. She wanted to ensure that the collective voice of those who had participated in the workshops would be heard loud and clear. As the town hall approached, Clara could feel the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Yet she also felt a sense of unity among the participants. They were no longer alone. They had each other, and together they could stand against the tide. The night of the town hall meeting arrived, and Clara stood before the gathered community, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was filled with faces, some familiar, some new, all drawn together by the desire to seek truth and healing. "Thank you for being here," Clara began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "We stand at a crucial moment in our community's history, one that demands our courage and solidarity. The Whitmore family may try to diminish our efforts, but we will not be silenced." As Clara shared the stories of resilience and courage that had emerged from the workshops, she noticed nods of agreement and murmurs of support from the audience. It was clear that the community was rallying together, ready to confront the Whitmores' narrative with their own truths. Clara invited participants to share their stories, and one by one, they stood to speak, their voices rising like a chorus of defiance against the darkness that had threatened to engulf them. Just as Clara felt the tide of support building, the doors swung open, and Margaret Whitmore strode into the room, flanked by a few supporters. The atmosphere shifted, tension crackling in the air as eyes turned toward her. "How dare you spread lies about my brother?" she exclaimed, her voice laced with fury. Clara felt her heart race, but she also felt the weight of her community behind her. "This isn't about lies, Margaret," she responded, her voice calm yet firm. "This is about truth and healing. It's about honoring Lillian's story and giving voice to those who've suffered in silence." The confrontation ignited a firestorm of emotions as attendees began to voice their thoughts, pushing back against Margaret's accusations. Clara could feel the collective energy of the room shift. This was no longer just her fight. The community was rising, standing united against the oppressive narrative that had persisted for far too long. As Margaret attempted to assert her dominance, the voices of the attendees grew louder, drowning out her protests. Clara felt a surge of strength. They were reclaiming their narrative, one voice at a time. Amidst the chaos, Clara understood that this moment was pivotal. The Whitmore family's grip on the town's legacy was slipping, and it was clear that the community was ready to embrace a new chapter, one rooted in honesty, healing, and shared stories. Clara's heart swelled with pride as she watched the attendees come together, united in their determination to forge a path forward. The echoes of silence that had long haunted Hawthorne were finally being silenced by the powerful chorus of truth and resilience. In the days that followed the town hall meeting, Clara felt a sense of renewed purpose and hope. While the fight for Lillian's legacy and the community's healing was far from over, she was buoyed by the knowledge that they were no longer alone. They were part of a movement, a force for change that could not be easily extinguished. The threads of their interconnected stories were woven together, creating a tapestry that celebrated both the light and the darkness of their shared past. As Clara prepared for the next steps in their journey, she knew that the path ahead would require courage and tenacity. The Whitmore family would likely respond, but she also understood that their resolve was now stronger than ever. Together, they would continue to confront the complexities of their history, ensuring that Lillian's story, and the stories of all those who had suffered in silence, would finally be heard. The community of Hawthorne was awakening, and the echoes of silence were transforming into a powerful anthem of truth and resilience. In the aftermath of the town hall meeting, the atmosphere in Hawthorne had shifted dramatically. The once muted conversations about Lillian Whitmore and her legacy were now vibrant discussions fueled by passion and urgency. Clara could feel the energy pulsating through the community as people began to embrace the idea of confronting the past, seeking not just to understand it, but to redefine it. The Whitmore family's grip on their collective memory was slipping, and for the first time in years, there was a palpable sense of hope mingled with determination in the air. As Clara resumed her efforts to promote the ongoing workshops, she was buoyed by the enthusiasm she encountered. More people were signing up, eager to participate and share their stories. The town had become a living testament to the power of vulnerability, with attendees bonding over shared experiences and exploring the healing potential of art and dialogue. Clara was particularly touched by the variety of participants, young and old, families and individuals, all united by a common goal: to confront their struggles and foster an environment of understanding. Yet, beneath the surface of this burgeoning community spirit, Clara could sense a tension simmering just out of sight. The Whitmore family had retreated into their shadows, but Clara was certain that they were formulating a response. She had heard rumors that Margaret was rallying supporters and seeking to undermine the narrative that Clara and her friends had worked so hard to build. Clara knew that the Whitmores would not accept defeat quietly. Their influence ran deep, and their desire to preserve their family's legacy would not easily wane. One afternoon, as Clara was preparing for the next workshop, she received an unexpected visit from Ethan. His usual buoyant demeanor was replaced by a somber expression, and Clara immediately sensed that something was amiss. "Clara, we need to talk," he said, pulling her aside into a quieter corner of the community center. "I've been hearing whispers that Margaret is planning to stage a counter-event. Something big. She wants to discredit everything we've been doing." Clara's stomach sank at the news. The last thing they needed was a public showdown that could overshadow their efforts. Ethan continued, "I think we should be proactive. If we know she's planning something, we can prepare a counter-narrative. We can invite people to share their stories of healing and empowerment at the same time. Make it clear that our movement isn't going anywhere." Clara nodded, appreciating Ethan's proactive approach. It was essential for them to remain united and to show that the voices of those who had been marginalized were now louder than ever. "Let's organize a community gathering," Clara suggested, her mind racing with ideas. "We can invite everyone, encourage them to bring their stories, and remind the community of what we stand for." Over the next few days, Clara and Ethan worked tirelessly to promote the gathering. They reached out to participants of the workshops, local artists, and even mental health professionals to ensure a diverse representation of voices. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with people eager to share their stories and support one another. Clara felt invigorated by the sense of solidarity among the attendees. They were all stepping into a new chapter together, united by their commitment to truth and healing. As the gathering approached, Clara's anxiety began to build. She was acutely aware of the Whitmore family's potential response. Margaret had a reputation for being tenacious and unyielding. She would not let her family's legacy be challenged without a fight. Clara knew that they needed to be prepared for whatever backlash might come, but she also believed deeply in the power of their message. The community deserved to hear the stories of those who had suffered in silence, and they needed to confront the Whitmore's narrative head-on. On the day of the gathering, the atmosphere buzzed with energy as participants arrived, each bringing their unique stories and experiences. Clara could feel the weight of anticipation in the air, a mix of excitement and apprehension. The community center was filled with colorful artwork, uplifting quotes, and even an open mic for individuals to share their narratives. As Clara surveyed the room, she felt a sense of pride swell within her. They were creating a space for healing, one that celebrated resilience and strength. Just as the gathering began to take shape, Clara caught sight of a familiar figure at the entrance. It was Margaret, flanked by several supporters. The sight sent a chill down Clara's spine. She had been anticipating this moment, yet seeing Margaret in person ignited a surge of anxiety. Clara exchanged a glance with Ethan, who nodded in silent support. They would not back down. This gathering was for the community, and they would stand firm in their commitment to truth. As Clara stepped to the front of the room to welcome attendees, she felt a wave of solidarity wash over her. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice steady and confident. "This gathering is a celebration of our shared experiences, a testament to the resilience within our community. We are here to amplify the voices that have been silenced for too long. Each story shared today is a step toward healing and understanding." Before Clara could continue, Margaret interrupted, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "You think you can just rewrite our family's history?" she shouted, her anger palpable. "You're turning this into a circus, and it's disgraceful. Lillian was a troubled woman, and you're glorifying her pain while dismissing the truth of our family." The room fell silent, tension thickening the air. Clara could feel the collective breath of the audience held tight, anticipating her response. Taking a deep breath, Clara steadied herself. "We're not here to glorify pain, Margaret," she replied, her voice calm but unwavering. "We're here to acknowledge it, to give it space, and allow it to be part of our collective narrative. Lillian's story is intertwined with our own, and denying that only perpetuates more pain. We need to face the complexities of our past, not hide from them." Clara's words hung in the air, and she could see a flicker of surprise in the faces of the attendees. They were witnessing a pivotal moment, a confrontation that transcended the personal conflict between Clara and the Whitmores. Margaret, momentarily taken aback, seemed to hesitate, as if her carefully constructed facade was cracking. Yet, she quickly regained her composure, her voice sharp as she retorted, "You're manipulating the truth to fit your narrative, and I won't stand for it." The crowd began to murmur, but Clara stood firm. "No one is manipulating anything here, Margaret. We are sharing our truths. Everyone here has a story, and we all deserve to be heard. The Whitmore family may have held power for too long, but that doesn't mean we should remain silent any longer." As the tension escalated, several attendees began to rise, one by one, sharing their own stories of struggle and resilience. The room was filled with voices that resonated with Clara's message, creating a powerful counter-narrative to Margaret's accusations. Clara felt a surge of energy, emboldened by the strength of those around her. This gathering was not just an event. It was a movement, a declaration that they would no longer be silenced. In that moment, Clara realized that their collective voice had the power to shatter the illusion of the Whitmore family's infallibility. The stories being shared were a testament to the strength of the human spirit, and they were illuminating the truth of their shared experiences. With each story, the weight of silence was lifted, revealing the strength of vulnerability. Clara felt a profound sense of connection with each participant as they reclaimed their narratives, one powerful voice at a time. As the gathering continued, Clara knew they were laying the groundwork for a new chapter in Hawthorne's history, one where truth would no longer be buried, and healing would become a communal endeavor. She felt a sense of pride wash over her as she looked around the room, witnessing the transformation that was taking place. This gathering was a celebration of resilience, a powerful reminder that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit could rise, united by shared stories and a commitment to truth. As the day drew to a close, Clara knew that the fight was far from over. The Whitmore family would undoubtedly regroup and retaliate, but the community had tasted the power of their collective voice. They were no longer passive bystanders in their own narrative. They were active participants, shaping the future of Hawthorne together. Clara felt a surge of determination as she looked into the faces of those around her. This was just the beginning, and they would face whatever came next as a united front. Together, they would ensure that the echoes of silence were replaced by an anthem of resilience, one that would resonate throughout the community for generations to come. In the wake of the community gathering, the mood in Hawthorne had shifted yet again. What had started as a confrontation with the Whitmore family was now transforming into a full-blown movement, with Clara and her allies at the forefront. The response to their gathering was overwhelmingly positive. Social media buzzed with support. Local businesses offered their spaces for future workshops, and residents eagerly began sharing their own stories. Yet amidst this wave of solidarity, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing on the horizon. Rumors began to circulate about the Whitmores' plans to retaliate. Clara learned through various channels that Margaret was rallying a group of influential townsfolk who had long been sympathetic to the family. The Whitmores had powerful connections that stretched beyond their familial ties, and Clara knew they could wield those connections to undermine the progress they had made. As Clara navigated this precarious landscape, she was reminded of the delicate balance between truth and perception, a battle that had far-reaching implications for the future of Hawthorne. Clara met with Ethan, Marjorie, and a few key supporters at the community center to strategize their next steps. "We can't afford to be complacent," Ethan said, his brow furrowed with concern. "If Margaret is rallying support, we need to counter that with our own narrative. We've made progress, but we need to solidify our foundation before they strike." Clara nodded in agreement, feeling the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. "We need to continue the momentum, but we also have to prepare for the possibility of backlash," she replied. The group spent hours brainstorming, their energy palpable as they mapped out their next steps. They decided to create a series of workshops focused specifically on advocacy and activism, teaching participants how to articulate their stories in a way that resonated with others. They aimed to empower attendees not just to share their experiences, but to become advocates for their own narratives, reinforcing the importance of community support and collective action. This would serve as both a means of healing and a strategy to build resilience against the impending storm. As the workshops were scheduled, Clara's thoughts often drifted back to Lillian's story. It was becoming increasingly clear that the fight was not only about the present, but also about honoring the past. The collective trauma that had gripped the community for generations was tied to the Whitmore legacy, and by addressing Lillian's experiences, they were dismantling the oppressive narrative that had long been accepted as truth. Clara felt a sense of duty to ensure that Lillian's story was not only remembered but revered, a beacon of hope for others who had felt silenced. One evening, while Clara was reviewing workshop materials, she received a text from Marjorie. "Clara, you need to come to the town hall. The Whitmores are planning something big, and it's happening tomorrow. I think we should be there." Clara's heart raced at the news. She could feel the urgency in Marjorie's message. She quickly gathered her notes and headed to the town hall, a sense of foreboding settling over her. When Clara arrived at the town hall, the atmosphere was electric with tension. A crowd had gathered, and she could see Margaret at the front, flanked by several supporters, her demeanor commanding as she prepared to address the audience. Clara took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was sure to be a confrontational showdown. This was the moment they had anticipated, the moment that would determine the trajectory of their movement. Margaret began speaking, her voice dripping with a mix of authority and disdain. "The Whitmore family has been wronged," she declared, her gaze sweeping over the audience. "For too long, our history has been twisted and misrepresented by those who seek to tear us down. We must protect our legacy, and I am here to set the record straight." Clara felt a swell of anger rise within her as she listened to Margaret's words. The audacity of claiming victimhood while attempting to undermine the voices of others was infuriating. Margaret continued, weaving a narrative that painted the Whitmores as the guardians of Hawthorne's history, while simultaneously casting Clara and her supporters as troublemakers intent on rewriting that history. Clara knew that Margaret was playing on the fears of those who were still loyal to the Whitmore name, attempting to galvanize them against a movement that sought to bring healing rather than destruction. Clara felt the tension in the room thicken as Margaret's supporters began to cheer, rallying around her rhetoric. Realizing that they could not allow this narrative to go unchallenged, Clara stood up and approached the front of the room, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt a wave of support from her allies, who began to murmur words of encouragement. "Margaret, with all due respect," Clara began, her voice steady despite the mounting tension, "we are not here to tear down the Whitmore legacy. We're here to acknowledge the complexities of our history. Silence has only bred more pain, and it's time for the community to come together and heal." The room fell silent, the air thick with anticipation as Clara continued. "Lillian's story is part of all of us, and we cannot move forward without addressing the truths that have been buried for so long. This isn't about rewriting history, It's about ensuring that everyone's voice is heard. Clara could see the shift in the audience as her words resonated. The division that had characterized the gathering was beginning to blur, replaced by a shared understanding that healing could only come through acknowledging the past. As Clara finished speaking, she felt a rush of relief wash over her. The crowd began to murmur among themselves, voices rising in support of her message. Some began to clap, a ripple of solidarity spreading through the audience. The shift in momentum was palpable, and Clara felt hope surge within her. They were not alone in this fight. The community was beginning to unite against the oppressive narrative that had long dictated their history. In that moment, Clara understood the true power of their movement. It was not just about confronting the Whitmores. It was about creating a new narrative that included the voices of those who had been silenced for too long. The confrontation with Margaret had ignited a fire within the community, and Clara realized that this was the turning point they had been waiting for. They were no longer passive participants in their own story. They were reclaiming their narratives and standing together against the tide of oppression. As the town hall meeting came to a close, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. The Whitmore family may have tried to intimidate them, but they had not succeeded. Instead, they had galvanized the community into action, uniting them under a banner of truth and resilience. Clara knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that they had the strength of their shared experiences to guide them. In the days that followed, Clara and her allies worked tirelessly to harness the momentum from the town hall meeting. They organized additional workshops, community discussions, and art exhibitions, all focused on healing and advocacy. Clara felt a sense of urgency driving her, knowing that they needed to solidify their gains before the Whitmores could regroup and mount a counteroffensive. The time for silence had passed. Now was the time for action. As Clara looked out over the growing community of advocates, she felt a profound sense of hope. They were no longer just voices in the darkness. They were a movement, fueled by the stories of resilience and strength that had emerged from their shared experiences. Together, they would confront the challenges ahead, ensuring that the echoes of their past would not be silenced, but instead transformed into a powerful anthem of healing and empowerment. In the heart of Hawthorne, a storm was indeed rising, but it was one that would clear the air, paving the way for a brighter future rooted in truth, understanding, and solidarity. As the days turned into weeks following the intense town hall confrontation, the atmosphere in Hawthorne was charged with a renewed sense of purpose. Clara and her team had harnessed the energy of the community gathering, translating it into a series of workshops and events that aimed to bridge the gaps left by years of silence and oppression. Each gathering drew more attendees than the last, with participants eager to share their stories, create art, and engage in meaningful discussions about healing and advocacy. The transformation in the community was palpable, and Clara could feel the tide beginning to turn. However, the Whitmores were not a family to be easily dismissed. Clara could sense that they were regrouping, their influential connections reaching out to those who felt threatened by the growing movement. Rumors of a counter-narrative swirled through the community like autumn leaves caught in a windstorm. Some of Clara's supporters had begun to express concern, wondering if the momentum they had built was strong enough to withstand the impending onslaught. Clara knew they needed to remain vigilant and proactive in their efforts. In response, Clara organized a meeting with Ethan, Marjorie, and several key allies to strategize their next steps. "We need to make sure our message is clear and resonates with the broader community," she emphasized, her voice steady yet filled with urgency. "We cannot allow the Whitmores to twist our narratives and turn people against us. We need to amplify our voices, not just through workshops, but by reaching out to local media and social platforms." The group nodded in agreement, recognizing the importance of a united front in the face of adversity. Over the next few days, they crafted a compelling narrative that highlighted the power of community healing and the importance of recognizing shared histories. They reached out to local newspapers and community radio stations, hoping to secure interviews and coverage of their movement. Clara also encouraged attendees of the workshops to share their own stories online, creating a digital space for dialogue and support. Social media became a powerful tool in their arsenal, allowing them to reach an even wider audience and gather support from outside Hawthorne. Despite their proactive efforts, Clara remained acutely aware of the Whitmore family's influence. She could feel their presence looming over the community like a dark cloud, threatening to overshadow the progress they had made. To bolster their spirits, Clara decided to organize a community art installation, encouraging residents to express their stories through various mediums. She believed that art had the power to transcend words, conveying the complexities of human experience in a way that could resonate with even the most skeptical audience. As the date of the art installation approached, Clara was filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. She watched as the community rallied together, transforming the town square into a vibrant tapestry of stories and emotions. Artists of all ages contributed their work. Paintings, sculptures, photographs, and written pieces that reflected their experiences with pain, healing, and resilience. The installation was set to be unveiled during a weekend festival, attracting not only residents but also visitors from surrounding areas. On the day of the festival, Clara arrived early to ensure everything was in place. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation as families set up booths, local musicians played, and food vendors prepared for a bustling crowd. Clara took a moment to survey the installation, feeling a swell of pride at the collective effort that had brought it to life. The stories displayed were a testament to the courage of those who had chosen to share their truths, and Clara hoped it would resonate with the community in profound ways. As the unveiling approached, Clara could feel a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. What if the Whitmores decided to disrupt the event? What if they attempted to undermine the installation, as they had done in the past? Clara tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing instead on the excitement and unity that surrounded her. This was their moment to shine, to showcase the power of vulnerability and the importance of community healing. Finally, the time came for the official unveiling. Clara stepped up to the microphone, her heart racing as she looked out over the gathered crowd. Welcome, everyone. Today we celebrate not just art, but the stories that unite us as a community. She began, her voice strong and clear. This installation represents the resilience of our spirit, the strength in our shared experiences, and the power of our voices. Each piece you see here tells a story of healing, of struggle, and of hope. Together, we can create a narrative that honors our past and inspires our future. As Clara spoke, she could feel the energy in the crowd shift. People were nodding in agreement, some even tearing up as they absorbed the weight of her words. The installation was more than just an exhibit. It was a reflection of the journey they had undertaken as a community. As Clara finished her speech, she invited attendees to explore the artwork and engage in conversations about the stories behind each piece. She hoped that the installation would spark discussions and deepen connections among community members. However, as the crowd dispersed to view the art, Clara spotted a familiar figure standing at the edge of the square. Margaret Whitmore, flanked by several supporters, was observing the installation with an expression of disdain. Clara's heart raced as she weighed her options. Should she approach Margaret and attempt to engage her in dialogue, or should she allow her to stand on the sidelines? Clara knew that the moment could define their movement's trajectory, and she felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility to uphold the values of unity and healing. Summoning her courage, Clara walked toward Margaret, her allies watching closely. "Margaret," she said, her voice steady yet respectful, "I see you here today, and I want to extend an invitation. This installation represents our community's journey toward healing, and I believe it's important for everyone to share their stories, including yours. Would you consider contributing to the dialogue?" Margaret's expression hardened, and Clara braced herself for a rebuttal. "You think you can just rewrite our family's history and invite me to participate in it?" Margaret snapped, her voice sharp with indignation. Clara could sense the tension in the air, but she refused to back down. "It's not about rewriting history. It's about acknowledging the pain and healing that comes from sharing our experiences," she replied. "We all have a story to tell, and I believe that including yours could foster understanding within our community." Clara hoped her words might reach some part of Margaret's humanity, but she remained acutely aware of the deep-rooted divide between them. Margaret hesitated, her fierce demeanor wavering for a brief moment. Clara seized the opportunity, continuing to speak from her heart. Every person's experience matters, Margaret. It's time for us to come together, to listen, and to find common ground. Healing is not a solitary journey. It's one we undertake together. For a fleeting moment, Clara thought she saw a flicker of recognition in Margaret's eyes, a glimmer of understanding. But then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished behind a wall of defiance. "I'll never be part of this charade," Margaret declared, turning away and leading her supporters off to the side. Clara felt a pang of disappointment, but also a sense of resolve. She knew that healing was a process, and sometimes it required patience and perseverance. The tide was turning in Hawthorne, and while they may not have swayed the Whitmores today, they had galvanized the community in a way that could not be undone. As the festival continued, Clara watched as attendees engaged with the art installation, discussing the stories behind each piece. The conversations were vibrant, filled with emotion and empathy, demonstrating that the community was beginning to embrace a new narrative, one rooted in healing and understanding. Clara felt a sense of pride swell within her, knowing that they were creating a safe space for dialogue, even in the face of opposition. The day ended on a high note, with laughter and connection filling the air. Clara couldn't help but smile as she watched friends and neighbors come together, united by the stories they had shared and the journey they were undertaking. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, Clara knew that they were building a foundation of resilience that would carry them through the storm. In the weeks that followed the festival, the community continued to thrive. More people began participating in workshops and discussions, and the collective desire for healing and truth began to overshadow the Whitmores' attempts to discredit their movement. Clara felt a renewed sense of hope as she reflected on the progress they had made. They were no longer simply responding to the Whitmores. They were actively reshaping the narrative of their town, one story at a time. As Clara prepared for the next workshop, she understood that the battle was far from over. The Whitmores would not quietly fade into the background. Their influence and reach would continue to pose a threat. However, Clara was no longer intimidated. She had seen the strength of community, the power of shared stories, and the resilience that emerged from vulnerability. Together, they would continue to rise against the tide, ensuring that the narrative of Hawthorne was not written solely by the powerful, but by every voice willing to share their truth. The turning tide was a promise of a brighter future, one where healing and understanding would pave the way for generations to come. As Hawthorne continued to flourish under the weight of collective healing, Clara became increasingly aware that the shadows of the past were far from banished. The art installation had sparked conversations that rippled through the community, yet beneath the surface, tensions still simmered. Rumors circulated regarding the Whitmore family's intentions to publicly challenge the movement Clara had helped ignite. While Clara remained committed to promoting unity, she could not shake the feeling that a reckoning was looming on the horizon. The Whitmores were planning a counter-event, one designed to regain their hold on the community narrative. Clara's heart sank as she heard snippets of conversation from various sources, alluding to a gathering that would seek to discredit the very essence of the healing movement. Clara understood that the Whitmores were using their wealth and influence to spin a narrative that painted them as victims, the townsfolk as misguided, and Clara herself as a manipulative instigator. The thought of facing such a potent force was daunting, yet Clara knew that retreating was not an option. In response to this threat, Clara gathered her closest allies, including Ethan and Marjorie, in a strategy session. "We need to prepare for whatever they throw at us," Clara said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "We can't let them derail what we've built. We need to be proactive in our messaging, and we must showcase the strength of our community." Ethan nodded, leaning forward in his chair. "We should reach out to those who attended our workshops and get their stories on social media. We need to remind everyone why we started this in the first place." The group agreed to amplify their voices, ensuring that their narratives would not be overshadowed by the Whitmore family's influence. They crafted a social media campaign that highlighted personal stories of healing, resilience, and empowerment. Clara encouraged everyone to share not only their experiences, but also the changes they had seen in the community since the movement began. The hope was that by collectively showcasing their strength, they could reinforce their message before the Whitmores had a chance to undermine it. As the days unfolded, Clara found herself balancing the demands of organizing the campaign with the emotional weight of the impending confrontation. She frequently reminded herself that this battle was not just about the Whitmores. It was about the legacy of countless individuals who had suffered in silence. Each story that surfaced through their campaign felt like a small victory, a way to reclaim the narrative of Hawthorne. Clara read through the posts and felt a mix of pride and determination as people expressed their gratitude for the space they had created. However, as the date of the Whitmores' counter-event approached, Clara's anxiety intensified. The community center buzzed with activity as Clara and her allies prepared for the upcoming confrontation, aware that the Whitmores would likely bring their most influential supporters. There were discussions about how to respond to any potential provocations, and Clara made it clear that they would maintain a peaceful presence at the event. "We're here to stand firm in our truth, not to retaliate with anger. We need to show that we are better than that," she emphasized. Finally, the day of the Whitmores' event arrived, and Clara felt a whirlwind of emotions as she stepped into the town hall. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a stark contrast to the vibrant energy of the previous festival. As Clara surveyed the crowd, she could see familiar faces mingling among the Whitmore supporters, many of whom appeared uneasy. It was evident that the divide in the community was widening, and Clara knew that the outcome of this event could tip the scales in either direction. Margaret Whitmore took to the stage, her presence commanding as she prepared to address the audience. Clara's heart raced as she listened to Margaret's speech, which was filled with accusations and half-truths. "This so-called movement has been a farce, designed to tarnish the legacy of my family," Margaret proclaimed, her voice steady and authoritative. "They've taken our history and twisted it to suit their narrative, attempting to erase the contributions of the Whitmores to this community. We will not stand for it." The crowd erupted in applause, and Clara felt a surge of frustration. It was clear that Margaret was playing on the fears of those who had long been loyal to the Whitmore name. Clara exchanged glances with her allies, feeling a shared sense of urgency. They needed to counter Margaret's message with their own truth, one that resonated with the very people she was trying to sway. When it was Clara's turn to speak, she took a deep breath, grounding herself in the strength of her convictions. "Margaret," she began, her voice steady despite the tension in the room, "this is not about erasing history. It's about acknowledging the complexities of our past and creating space for all voices to be heard." Clara's gaze swept over the audience, and she could see several faces nodding in agreement, bolstering her confidence. She continued, sharing stories from the community that underscored the importance of truth and healing. "This movement is not a rejection of the Whitmore legacy, but an invitation to expand it," Clara insisted, her voice rising with passion. "We cannot heal as a community if we continue to silence those who have suffered. It is time to listen, to acknowledge the pain, and to move forward together." Clara could feel the energy in the room shift as her words resonated with many in attendance, a reminder that they were not alone in this fight. However, the tension escalated as some of Margaret's supporters shouted back, refusing to accept Clara's message. "You're just trying to manipulate us," one man yelled, his face flushed with anger. The air crackled with animosity, and Clara sensed that the event could devolve into chaos at any moment. She felt a wave of apprehension wash over her, but she remained resolute. "This isn't about manipulation. It's about transparency and unity. We must confront our history to move forward as a community," Clara declared, her voice unwavering. As the crowd began to respond, Clara realized that the tide was shifting. Many who had once been loyal to the Whitmores now stood at a crossroads, grappling with the truths Clara had shared. They were faced with a choice: to cling to a singular narrative or to embrace the complexity of their collective history. Clara could feel a sense of hope budding among her supporters, their determination shining through despite the noise of dissent. The event unfolded into a heated debate, with voices rising and clashing. Clara and her allies stood firm, responding to questions and challenges with patience and clarity. They sought to defuse tensions and reinforce the message of healing, knowing that the battle was not merely for the present moment, but for the very future of their community. Clara felt a sense of empowerment surge through her as she stood shoulder to shoulder with those who had shared their stories, their collective strength a testament to their resilience. As the evening drew to a close, Clara sensed that while the confrontation had been fraught with tension, it had also sparked a crucial dialogue. Though the Whitmore family's grip on the community was still strong, cracks were beginning to form in their narrative. Clara knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but she felt a renewed sense of hope that the voices of those who had long been silenced would finally be heard. Together, they were creating a space for healing, for understanding, and for a future that acknowledged the richness of their shared history. In the days following the event, Clara continued to engage with community members, fostering conversations about healing and resilience. The work ahead was daunting, but she felt invigorated by the connections she had forged. They were no longer just allies. They were a family, united by their desire for truth and understanding. Clara knew that the journey was far from over, but with every story shared and every voice amplified, they were weaving a new narrative for Hawthorne, one that honored their past while paving the way for a brighter future. In the wake of the turbulent confrontation at the town hall, the atmosphere in Hawthorne was electric with both anticipation and uncertainty. Clara had become a figure of hope and resilience for many, yet the divide between the two factions, those aligned with her vision of healing and those loyal to the Whitmore legacy, was more pronounced than ever. The Whitmores were not about to let the community's shift in narrative go unchallenged. Rumors swirled that they were planning a new strategy to regain control over the town's narrative, and Clara knew that time was of the essence. As Clara sat in her living room, surrounded by her trusted allies, Ethan, Marjorie, and several workshop participants, she felt the weight of their collective anxiety. They gathered to strategize their next steps, fueled by the momentum of the recent event, but aware of the looming threat posed by the Whitmores. "We need to stay proactive," Clara said, glancing around the room. "The longer we wait, the more they can twist the narrative. We have to make sure our stories continue to be heard." Ethan nodded, leaning forward with intensity. "Let's organize a community discussion series," he proposed. "We can invite people from all sides, those who support our movement and those who still align with the Whitmores. It's essential that we foster dialogue and understanding." The room fell silent as Clara considered the idea. It was ambitious, but she recognized the need for open conversations to bridge the growing divide. Clara felt a rush of determination as she articulated the plan. "We'll hold these discussions in neutral spaces, like local parks or the community center. This way, people can feel comfortable sharing their perspectives without fear of judgment. We need to encourage empathy and understanding among all residents." Her allies nodded in agreement, recognizing that this was not just a battle for their movement. It was a chance to heal the fractures that had formed in their community. With the plan in place, Clara and her team began reaching out to community members, inviting them to participate in the discussions. Clara felt a surge of hope as people began to respond positively, intrigued by the idea of open dialogue. Yet, a lingering fear gnawed at her. What if the Whitmores used these discussions to undermine their efforts? What if they twisted the conversations to further their agenda? Despite her apprehension, Clara remained committed to the goal of fostering understanding. The day of the first discussion arrived, and Clara felt a mix of excitement and trepidation as she set up the community center. Folding chairs were arranged in a circle, creating an intimate setting for the dialogue. Clara hoped that the format would encourage openness, allowing everyone to share their experiences and feelings without feeling confronted. As attendees began to arrive, she greeted them warmly, striving to create an atmosphere of inclusivity and respect. As the discussion kicked off, Clara introduced the format, explaining that the goal was to listen deeply and share perspectives. "This isn't about winning an argument. It's about understanding each other," she emphasized. The attendees, a mix of both sides of the divide, settled into their seats, some appearing hesitant while others seemed eager to engage. Clara could feel the tension in the room, but she pressed on, confident that vulnerability would pave the way for healing. As the first participant spoke, sharing their experience of feeling marginalized and unheard, Clara observed the reactions in the room. Some members of the Whitmore faction exchanged uneasy glances, while others nodded empathetically. Clara felt a flicker of hope. This is the power of storytelling, she thought. It allows us to see each other as human beings, rather than just labels. As the discussions continued, stories began to unfold, painting a complex picture of Hawthorne's history. Participants shared personal anecdotes that highlighted the struggles and triumphs of their lives, illustrating how the past had shaped their identities and connections to the community. Clara noted the gradual shift in the atmosphere as attendees began to lean into the conversations, actively listening and reflecting on their experiences. Yet, amid the growing understanding, Clara remained keenly aware of the looming threat of disruption. Just as the conversation reached a poignant moment of connection, the door swung open, and Margaret Whitmore entered, flanked by several supporters. Clara's heart sank as she recognized the familiar tension in the room. "I hope you're not expecting a warm welcome," Margaret remarked with a smirk, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Clara sensed the anxiety ripple through the crowd, the fragile atmosphere hanging by a thread. "Margaret, we're here to engage in dialogue," Clara said, her voice steady despite the sudden upheaval. "We invite everyone to share their stories, regardless of their stance." The tension was palpable as Margaret surveyed the room, her expression one of disdain. "You think this is a genuine effort?" she scoffed. "This is just a staged attempt to paint us as villains. You want us to lay down our defenses and be vulnerable while you continue your little charade." Clara could feel her pulse quicken, but she remained composed. "This isn't about playing the victim or the villain, Margaret. It's about acknowledging our shared history and finding a way to heal together." Despite Clara's attempts to extend an olive branch, the atmosphere thickened with animosity as Margaret and her supporters began to voice their skepticism, challenging the narratives that had emerged during the discussions. Yet, amid the chaos, Clara noticed that some members of the audience began to speak up in support of her message. "I think we need to listen to each other," one woman said, her voice trembling but resolute. "It's easy to dismiss what we don't understand, but we owe it to ourselves to hear these stories." Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, knowing that despite the tension, there were those who were willing to bridge the divide. As the discussion spiraled into a heated debate, Clara intervened, urging everyone to take a step back and reflect. "Let's remember why we're here," she implored. "This isn't just about our differences. It's about healing as a community. Let's not allow our fears to overshadow our desire for understanding." Her words resonated with some attendees, and slowly, the room began to settle once more. The remainder of the discussion was fraught with tension, but Clara could sense a shift. Some Whitmore supporters, though hesitant, began to share their own experiences, revealing the complexities of their perspectives. As the evening progressed, Clara felt a sense of accomplishment. Despite the interruptions and confrontations, there had been moments of genuine connection, a testament to the power of storytelling and vulnerability. As the discussion concluded, Clara breathed a sigh of relief, feeling both exhausted and invigorated. The conversations had been challenging, but they had laid the groundwork for deeper understanding within the community. Clara knew that there was still much work to be done, and the shadows of the past would not dissipate overnight. Yet, she felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they were beginning to navigate the fractures that had long divided them. As she packed up the chairs and prepared to leave the community center, Clara glanced around the room, taking in the mixed expressions of attendees. Some were deep in thought, while others engaged in animated conversations, reflecting on the evening's discussions. Clara felt a surge of gratitude for the courage shown by everyone who participated. Though the path ahead remained fraught with challenges, she knew that with every shared story, they were moving closer to a more unified community. The journey was far from over, but Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. She understood that healing required ongoing dialogue, compassion, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. The fractures in Hawthorne were evident, Yet Clara knew that as long as they continued to share their stories and listen to one another, they stood a chance of weaving a new narrative, one that honored their past while embracing the potential for a brighter future together. As the sun set on Hawthorne, casting a warm, golden hue over the town, Clara felt a profound sense of purpose wash over her. The discussions at the community center had set in motion something deeper than she had anticipated. Despite the challenges they faced, the small victories of connection and understanding had begun to weave a new fabric of community, one that transcended the old divisions that had long defined Hawthorne. Clara knew that the journey ahead would require patience, resilience, and unwavering commitment to the principles of healing and truth. In the days following the initial discussions, Clara and her allies continued their outreach efforts, organizing a series of workshops focused on storytelling and empathy. They invited community members to share their experiences, creating a safe space for vulnerability and openness. Each gathering felt like a stepping stone, guiding the town toward reconciliation. Clara recognized that healing was not a linear process. It ebbed and flowed, with moments of connection followed by instances of frustration and doubt. However, each story shared was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a reminder that their struggles were not in vain. One evening, as Clara prepared for another workshop, she received an unexpected message from a local journalist. The journalist had been following the developments in Hawthorne and wanted to cover the community's efforts toward healing. Clara's heart raced with both excitement and apprehension. Media attention could amplify their message, but it could also attract scrutiny from those who opposed their movement. After a brief discussion with her allies, they decided to welcome the journalist, believing that transparency was key to their mission. The following week, the journalist attended one of the workshops, capturing the heartfelt stories shared by community members. Clara felt a renewed sense of hope as she watched people engage with the journalist, eager to express their truths. This is an opportunity to showcase our community's resilience, Clara thought as she led the workshop. As attendees spoke about their experiences, Clara felt the energy in the room shift. The vulnerability they displayed not only deepened their connections, but also inspired others to join the conversation. When the article was published, it resonated with readers beyond Hawthorne, garnering attention from neighboring towns. Clara felt a mixture of pride and disbelief as she read the headline, Healing Hawthorne, a community's journey toward understanding. The article highlighted the stories of individuals who had long felt marginalized and featured Clara's vision for a more inclusive future. It emphasized the importance of empathy in bridging the divide, shedding light on the complexity of their shared history. Yet, as the article gained traction, the Whitmore's response was swift and fierce. Margaret Whitmore, incensed by the portrayal of her family, issued a public statement denouncing Clara's movement as a dangerous manipulation of the truth. She claimed that the community was being misled and called for a counter-campaign to restore the Whitmore legacy. Clara felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. The momentum they had built was now under threat, and Clara realized that they needed to counter the Whitmore narrative with clarity and purpose. In response, Clara convened an emergency meeting with her allies. "We can't let their narrative drown out our progress," she asserted, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "We need to amplify our voices and continue sharing our stories. The truth is powerful, and it's time to remind everyone why this movement matters." Her allies nodded in agreement, understanding that they were at a critical juncture. They discussed strategies for countering the Whitmore narrative, including a social media campaign highlighting personal testimonies of those impacted by the healing movement. As Clara and her team crafted their messages, they also prepared for a public forum organized by the local council. The council had proposed the forum as a way to allow both sides to present their perspectives, hoping to foster dialogue. Clara understood that this could be an opportunity to share their message on a larger stage. "We must come prepared to share our stories authentically," she emphasized. "This is our chance to reclaim the narrative and remind the community of our commitment to healing." The night of the public forum arrived, and Clara felt the energy in the air crackle with tension. The venue was filled to capacity, with townsfolk eager to witness the unfolding debate. Clara took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was not merely a battle for recognition, but a chance to emphasize the importance of empathy and understanding. As she took her place at the front, she could see both familiar and unfamiliar faces in the audience, a reflection of the town's diverse perspectives. Margaret Whitmore took the stage first, her presence commanding as she presented a polished and vehement defense of her family's legacy. She spoke of the Whitmores' historical contributions to Hawthorne, framing the healing movement as a misguided effort to rewrite history. Clara could feel the tension in the room as supporters of the Whitmores clapped and cheered. Yet, amid the applause, Clara noticed several individuals who appeared conflicted, their faces betraying their uncertainty. When it was Clara's turn to speak, she felt a surge of determination. She began by acknowledging the complexities of the town's history, including the Whitmores' contributions. But we must also recognize that history is not one-dimensional, Clara stated, her voice resonating with passion. The stories we have shared in this movement reflect the voices that have been silenced for far too long. It is time for us to embrace the fullness of our community's narrative. Clara's words pierced through the crowd, and she could sense the atmosphere shifting. As Clara continued, she shared poignant stories from community members, testimonies that spoke of resilience, pain, and healing. She emphasized the need for empathy in navigating their shared history, urging everyone to listen deeply and understand one another's experiences. We are not here to erase the past. We are here to illuminate the truths that have long been buried, she asserted. The audience began to respond, some nodding in agreement while others appeared to be reflecting on her words. The forum progressed, with both sides presenting their viewpoints. Clara felt a sense of accomplishment as she witnessed several attendees engage in meaningful conversations during the breaks. People began to approach each other, sharing perspectives and challenging assumptions. The energy in the room shifted from one of division to one of connection, and Clara recognized that this was the transformative power of storytelling in action. As the evening drew to a close, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of hope. While the Whitmores would undoubtedly continue to challenge their movement, the seeds of understanding had been sown within the community. Clara knew that healing would take time and effort, but the conversations initiated at the forum were a significant step forward. As she looked around at the faces in the audience, she saw the potential for growth and unity. In the days that followed, Clara and her allies focused on nurturing the connections forged during the forum. They organized follow-up discussions, allowing individuals to reflect on their experiences and share insights from the event. Clara felt a renewed sense of energy as community members began to engage with one another, challenging their own biases and assumptions. The ripple effect of their efforts was beginning to manifest, and Clara knew that this was just the beginning. Amid the blossoming connections, Clara remained vigilant about the Whitmore response. While the Whitmores continued to rally their supporters, it became clear that their narrative was losing traction. Many community members began to question the validity of the Whitmore perspective, and Clara's movement gained momentum. The journey toward healing was ongoing, but Clara felt a deep sense of gratitude for the resilience of her community. As Clara reflected on the transformation taking place in Hawthorne, she recognized the threads that had woven them together. Their shared stories, struggles, and aspirations had created a tapestry of resilience, each individual thread representing a unique perspective. Clara understood that while the past would always shape their identity, it was the collective commitment to understanding and empathy that would define their future. With renewed resolve, Clara looked toward the horizon, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. She knew that the journey toward healing and understanding was far from over, but as long as they continued to share their stories and listen to one another, there was hope for a brighter tomorrow. In the heart of Hawthorne, amidst the echoes of the past and the promise of the future, Clara felt a profound sense of belonging, knowing that they were on the path toward a more inclusive and united community.